Hello and welcome to BonkTable. I'm Ass, and with me is my esteemed guest, Steve.
Low.
We are going to be playing Elden Ring, OD in the shadow of, well, I guess the shadow of the Old Dominion, or Old Dominion in the shadow of the Erdtree. We'll figure out a title later. And Steve is going to go over Old Dominion, answer all my questions, and whatever else I ask him about the faction, do a kind of a faction breakdown, different things, what's going on with it, and so on. So, Steve, first question for you, you can't see my gameplay, but as I enter the realm of shadows, why did you pick Old Dominion as your faction? Let's start with there.
I think that if I'm being very, very honest, when they had Project 6 or whatever it was called at the time, and they had the kind of promotional art of the Archimandrite standing next to a bone golem, I saw that and I'm like, no, done, easy. Take all my votes.
Okay, so I found that piece of artwork. I did an AMV with like a ton of Parabellum art and like community miniatures, and I found that piece of artwork, and while I was going through all of Parabellum's art, because they put their art between like the Facebook, like their Facebook page and their website. And when I saw that, I was like, "That's a really good piece of art." And then they have another version of it, like what's kind of color shifted. Like, so they have that.
Is it the purplish one with the Irideacon?
Yeah, I believe so. Like, they have one. I think it's like it's either Hierodeacon or Archimandrite in the regular Old Dominion colors. That's previewed on like box art, and then they have one that's more purplish.
So the purplish one that kind of has an abstract look to it, in my opinion. That one's kind of the Irideacon one, I think.
Mm-hmm.
If I can, yep, there it is. No, I'm lying. Never mind. It is the one I've seen it around, but yeah, that one's pretty good. Also, the art of the Killiarch was great. Another one that was really good is the one that they have if you go to the website and look at the Old Dominion on the world section of the what I'm guessing was like a proto Caryatid and proto Canophore. I don't even told it's not actually a Canophore, but they have to reuse it at some point because that flaming angel with the fiery halo and the molten tears and like the verdigris covered great sword. That's boy, that did some serious promotional work for the faction.
Yeah, that one's also really cool. Is it? Did you see the ones where it was like when you go on the e-store? That's not the e-store. It's like the faction selection on the Parabellum page, where it's like the weird circular-headed bird guy and the weird sun guy, and it's like
that's actually what I just mentioned.
Okay, I'm making sure because that it's really weird because that artwork I think is really cool and awesome, but there's nothing associated minis wise to that artwork. While a lot of the other artwork there is.
I suspect that again they claim that the like flaming halo thing is not the Canophore. It serves the fallen divinity, at least from the promotional video they put out, where like they all come to life and like stand in attention in front of her. But I would suspect that at some point that may have been like a proto Canophore and a proto Caryatid. And it just turned out that wanting to do a dual kit, one of those had to make the cut, and of the two, I'm guessing that gooey statue ladies are probably much easier to do a dual kit with than a winged, flaming haloed thing carrying a great sword and a big shield, bigger than most grown soldiers. So I really hope that they reincorporate the thing with the halo at some point, because holy cow, that thing is incredible. I love it.
Yeah, so I do. I don't know what it was. I think someone said like that was a proto fallen divinity was in there, and I'm just like, okay, I don't mind the current fallen divinity model and artwork at all. I don't know. I like Sun Man. Looks way cooler to me, just off the top.
Well, so if you watch the Old Dominions, like if you click on the world in the upper right hand corner, click on Old Dominion. There's the launch video. It has those statues, and like I said, there's like 8 of them standing in attention in front of the fallen divinity. So as like they reawoke in service to their dark god or dark, whatever it is. I guess a lesser god. I don't know
To
however that works.
we're just gonna call him Haziel Death Daddy from now on. Basically, anything than Daddy is what everyone's gonna be referred to now going forward.
Well, there is a guy at my store that calls bone golems bone daddies. So I guess.
Well, yeah. We also have Pump Daddy for the Talos. Like, it'll never end. At this point, everyone's just gonna be Daddy. Oh man. So when you got the minis, so after you saw that and you were like, oh, look at these minis. What did you think of the model line? That's another one.
Well, having built a few of the Wodroon by that point for a friend that was getting into the game, and then also starting with Spires in like summer of 2020, I was pretty pleased. I know there were lots of people complaining about, the Legionnaires are really fiddly, and they are. I'm not super fond of the spears, and in particular the banner being held together just at like a little tiny wrist connection, especially because it's not even like a thin wrist, it's like a little skeletal emaciated wrist, so it's extra thin, holding up this stupid banner. So they break easily. The shields aren't the most intuitive for putting on compared to some of the things like hoplites, for example. Stupid easy. But overall, I think the kits were really nice. They were a step up. They were not as static as some of the very early Wodroon, where they're all kind of T-posing. So
they're asserting dominance. Let's correct this here. This is an assertion of dominance.
Somewhat to my benefit and detriment, I got kind of weird with the posing, where I'm like, well, they're kind of at various stages of advanced decay and mummification and whatnot. So I kind of got a little weird. Their heads are kind of lolling in weird directions. They kind of have their spears and their shields kind of everywhere. It looks great. It lines up horribly on the stands, so I'm kind of kicking myself for that. But there's the kind of the ball socket joints for a lot of it, so you have a lot of posability. The carries are a model that happened.
Yeah. You want to talk about it?
So they have fairly ill-defined, they have very kind of general ball and sockets where there's kind of a little nub. There's a little tiny concave surface that you can kind of attach to it if you use glue properly. Problem is that if anything touches it, it's likely to either snap the arm or just fall off, and they're kind of flailing all over with their crazy ass spell casting effects, so they're kind of a pain to line up on the stands compared to almost anything else in the army. One person at my store had a genius decision where he realized, cool, so I can start off with the starter set that came out at the time, do 3 stands of carries, 3 stands of Mori. I can use all the extra carries arms from the Mori half, and just do most of them as having 2 hands with no spells. So they line up like a dream, and the rest of us are just sitting there going, "That smart son of a bitch! Why did I think of that?"
Okay, that's actually pretty good.
So if you're like him and you use your brain, you can actually do a good chunk of them with 2 regular hands, so that it's much less of a clusterfuck on the stand. But overall, I think they're fairly characterful. I love the way that the Praetorian Guard look.
I've kind of talked to Cass about this before, where Old Dominion doesn't grab me very much. I'm more of a human Roman guy. That's kind of just decreasing my volume so I can hear you better. So yeah, I don't know. I like the more I don't like the Byzantine aspect of Old Dominion. So their statue stuff, the bone golems, Kiritids, and Canifers, really grab me. But the more just we're undead people, I'm just man, whatever.
See, I was kind of the opposite, where I really feel that, because there are a lot of games that are cool, it's not the ancient Romans. Whereas the Byzantine Roman side of things, I think, kind of gets left out unless you're going into historicals. But I love the look of the cataphracti with the scale mail on the horses. The kind of like Byzantine iconography on the bone golems, the kind of more formal and kind of lavish vestments on the Archimandrite and the Iridique and things like that.
So
plus, I just like undead. Like,
yeah, okay.
War Machine, I started with Crix.
Oh God. Okay, I don't know if we could be friends now.
Well, no, I very quickly switched to Scorn after that, and this was Mark 2, so
you poor bastard.
This isn't even when they were like.
They weren't even good.
They weren't. Then going into Mark 3, they broke them horribly in a bad way, and then I got out of the game around that time, and then I didn't even stick around for when they made them good broken as an apology for what happened at the beginning of Mark 3. But,
the sins of Scorn.
But like if I look back, it's like Crix in War Machine, briefly Resurrectionists in Malifaux. Bone and Darkness from Relic Blade. There's a bunch of others that I'm not going to bother rattling off because there's too many games and I'll be here all day.
Yeah. Like I kind of liked Crix a little. Oh, someone's slapping me. I like Crix a little more than I guess. I don't know. Maybe like zombies and skeleton-esque things don't do it for me, but the more like horrific parts of undead factions do grab it for me. Like I'm kind of thinking about fantasy, and like a lot of their stuff from Warhammer Fantasy Undead doesn't really grab me, but like the dragon, the undead dragon, and all the different ghouls and crypt horrors and crypt like stuff does. While in War Machine, the pirate, like the trolls and pirates, Crix stuff didn't really grab me, but then it was like the Jacks and all. What else was in Crix? Now I have to really think back. Like the characters grab me, like Terminus, the half dragon, or the dragon warcaster is probably like one of the most crazy looking like best minis I've ever seen. He is terrible to build, but
so I loved the model. I had no idea. I didn't have a good appreciation for what his actual face looked like because he just kind of had like this weird open maw, and it's like, okay, that's the mouth, but like what defines the head relative to like his artwork? It didn't really translate for me. And then he also had like that weird little, I don't know, like little withered stick arm that's just kind of hanging off to the side doing nothing. And then he had his fuck off rusted rotting sword in the other. That's the one you paid attention to. But it's kind of what's this little stump arm doing over here? But no, that was like the second warcast.
Yeah, him, Aphixius. But like the Thralls were okay. I didn't really gravitate. You know what? Banes. That was it. Banes really grabbed me. I kind of like them more. Like their armor looked really distinct.
They were like 90% armor and just like the little skull poking out.
Yeah. I think that's why I'm also like more of a 100k guy, because it's just like put dude in armor, don't show face, has a cool helmet, good enough for me. Like I'm happy.
See, that's the great thing about Old Dominion, because I hate trying to paint faces, especially living ones, where it's like, oh, they actually have to worry about like color and shade and this and that instead of everything just being beef jerky. But with Old Dominion, everything's either a statue, a golem, or
beef jerky.
Or beef jerky. But most of them have death masks on, so I can just slap something on that and be like, nope, good, job done. There we go.
Yeah.
If you do like the horror stuff, though, I don't. God, I wish that I should ask PB the next time I see some of them at a convention if there's any plans for it at some point. But in the campaign book, in the lore blurb, where they talk about the kind of the last stand of the last legion against Aslia's kind of newly birthed onslaught. They do bring up like the weird corpse spiders, where Haslia just kind of goes like, all right, whatever, let's just take a bunch of bodies, just, sticky tack them together, and just have, like, these horrible, spidery, rotting flesh mounds just, like, skitter up walls and just carve people apart, and it's like, ooh, I kind of want one.
Alright, that one's actually kind of cool. Yeah, I think it's just, like, I'm not a huge undead guy. Like, I think it's cool, but I'm also like, meh, there's other things that I'm more attached to. But I'm glad that's in the game for people, especially, like, yourself being an undead fan. Like, it's there for you.
I like undead and I like big stompy things, and I saw the Cataphracti, I saw the Bone Golems, I saw the Fallen Divinity, and I'm just like, yeah, no, I'm home.
I'll take your entire stock. Just print that money.
I like to think that I probably funded at least one of the new armies simply through my purchases at this point.
Man, when I played War Machine, when at the store I used to play at, there was the store owner would joke that I'm putting her kids through college just by the amount of War Machine I bought.
Joke. Good one.
Yeah, and it's like, you're welcome, Wendy. So I'm glad we now know how you got into the game. So, how does not Fall? Well, we'll get to the Fall Divinity. How does Old Dominion play? Like, what's their strategy? What's their game plan? What are they doing to win? What are they, kind of what are they good at? What are they bad at? Like, but let's start with their overall game plan, like strategies and tactics wise.
So, oh boy, the one topic I'm not going to be very authoritative on. I would say that.
Says the very good old Dominion player. Yeah, okay. You got to be doing something right to do well.
Don't praise me too much. It'll go right to my head, and I'll be insufferable.
Yeah, you'll turn into Carl.
he can back it up. He's earned it.
Yeah.
I would say that. Plus, this is a little weird because if you had asked me about 6 months ago, I would have a somewhat different answer. In general, they're pretty good at kind of castling up. You generally don't want to spread out too thin. Kind of like a good zombie film. You kind of have this blob that's advancing on you and just kind of overwhelm the enemy's defenses with just continued onslaught of shit coming their way. And kind of once you get into position, you kind of just hold on and hopefully the lack of taking resolve, not taking resolve off of melee or magic engagements will kind of hopefully have your stuff dying at a slightly slower rate than theirs. You kind of gain power and steam as you have stuff die off to power your empowerment pools, and slowly but surely just kind of grind away at them until something gives, at which point you just kind of burst through and just kind of clean up what's left.
So it's more of an attrition, grindy style faction / game plan?
Yeah, considering that one of the trade-offs for not taking resolve is that you can't inspire on demand outside of a charge.
Mm-hmm.
You have to wait until you're about 18 tokens deep to be always inspired. So, if something gets into combat, most of your stuff's sitting at a whopping Clash 2 and can't inspire. So, it's kind of a slower start. I try to tell people that are starting the faction that the recommendation I have is don't tilt until turn 7. Because you'll probably spend the first 6 or 7 turns thinking, cool, I had like 13 attacks, or I had like 18 attacks or something, and I hit with like 4 of them. This is great. I just lost another stand. I'm just constantly getting shaved down bit by bit. And then all of a sudden, like, just enough things will die. You'll just bleed over into your, next tier. You'll get a pretty significant power spike. And then all of a sudden, you're coming out swinging, and the opponent's not really able to respond well at that point. Ideally. Now, if it gets to turn 7 and things are still really not going well for you, and all your stuff's dead, and all your heavy hitters are dead, sure, tilt away. You probably screwed up real bad, and you're probably going to get completely outclassed on points, which also used to be one of the big weaknesses before the recent updates, where because it was a slower army, usually the other players could get a pretty good lead on points while you're kind of getting into position, getting up to speed. And if you didn't kind of turn the tide quick enough, then it's very likely that even if you tabled them, they could still probably outscore you. Less likely now, thanks to 2 primary changes. One, The Blasphemous Soma special army rule now lets you modify your target rolls for your reinforcements. So basically, instead of needing 4s for lights or things like that, you'd need 5. Instead of needing 2s, you need 3s, etc., etc. So much more consistent with getting your stuff on the table now, getting it earlier, getting it more reliably. That's really kind of increased the kind of their scenario viability. And then also, the Foot Stratios has a wacky ability called From the Front, where he can treat a medium regiment in his warband as though that he's attached to, as though it were a light for purposes of entering the table. So what you'll see a lot of now is take a big block of Praetorians, have him buff the living daylights out of it. Interesting choice of words, living, but I digress.
Yeah.
And basically just auto that in turn 1. So by turn 2, you pretty much have a giant hateful brick of Praetorians up on an objective, and good luck trying to shift that with whatever's normally coming in on turn 1 or 2.
Yeah, it's a very powerful combo that's been kind of pushing that, that combo, and was the Blasphemous Soma combo has been really pushing Old Dominion into a top tier faction,
Which is weird because
or a faction that's been causing people a lot more trouble than it used to be. That kind of okay. So that gets into a question of I'm gonna ask this question twice, but it's gonna be for 2 different kind of types of players. So for newer players, what do newer players tend to have issues in Old Dominion? Like if they have to fight Old Dominion and if they have to play Old Dominion. So like what are the issues for newer players? And you know what the next one's going to be after this. But let's start there.
So I guess for new players encountering Old Dominion for the first few times, the fact that they don't take resolve damage really screws a lot of them. That basically cuts the amount of damage they're taking by a significant amount. I don't really think that they fully appreciate that a lot of the things in Old Dominion are, outside of a few couple standouts, generally defense like 2 or 3. So they don't really realize that if you just dump attacks into them, you'll kind of get around that a little bit. That's kind of one thing you can do to kind of counteract their strengths, is either just hose them with ranged and or volume of attacks, or both. The fact that they are all terrifying, so a lot of times, cool, they tried to go into you. They didn't do as much damage as they may have been thinking, because they didn't really factor in the lack of resolve. Old Dominion swings back into them, and they're taking maybe not quite as many hits outside of a weird dice spike due to the lack of inspiration for Old Dominion, but those resolve penalties can kind of suck. Another thing is that a lot of people seem to like starting the game under 2,000 points. I understand, much easier to get into the game when you just need the, starter set as opposed to a full army.
Two starter sets and a little bit else sometimes.
Yeah, but Old Dominion has its tiers scale with points, and as it currently stands, if you play at 1,000 points, they start immediately at tier 2. They get all of their Memory of Old benefits as draw events instead of actions. That's pretty rough to start into. Because basically, Praetorians activate. Cool. Their start if the Old Dominion player goes first, they start with Praetorians. Cool. Praetorians are now defense 4. And if you're in a 1,000-point game, you probably can't expect the other player to have answers for everything that Old Dominion is bringing, especially if they're bringing a bunch of Aura of Death, or if they're bringing, a big Praetorian brick, or even a smaller Praetorian brick. It's pretty hard to chew through. You don't probably have a lot of the Cleave 2, Cleave 3, Deadly, high volume of hits, ranged. You just don't have that toolbox available yet. New players starting with Old Dominion. There seems to be a lot of confusion about how the Dark Power works.
Read up on your rules.
Read them, take a nap, read them again, sleep on it overnight, read them again. Just keep reading them and ask. Please ask people how
Okay.
it works, because there's a lot of interesting interpretations I've seen where it doesn't work the way you think it does. For example.
Okay, how about this? Sorry, before you can,
Yep.
sorry to interrupt you, but how does Dark Power Pool work? Let's just do
Cool.
it right now.
Okay, Dark Power Pool.
Yeah,
Very straightforward.
the people want to know.
So, Old Dominion scales as the game goes on. Both every turn, due to the Blasphemous Soma, you get a power token. You can choose to have it go into either of your pools. For the purpose of this, we're just going to start with the Dark Power Pool. Once you hit 9 token, or you also get a token every time that one of your stands dies. You can revive stands with healing spells, and they can die again. That's fine. It generates another token anytime a stand dies, as long as it has the animate vessel special rule, which denotes them as being undead. Once you hit 9 tokens, basically tier 1, nothing special. Undead units can use their Memory of Old special ability, which gives them little benefits unique to their regiment as an action. Once you hit 9 tokens or more, you hit tier 2. You can use that Memory of Old either as a draw event or an action. And at tier 3, which is 18 tokens or more, you can double up on it potentially. You can use it as a draw event to end an action, as long as the effects are capable of stacking with a +1. Tier 4, you only get that if you take the Stratios or Kiliarch as your warlord. That's 23 tokens, and at that point, morale tests of 6 results on a morale test that are, when you roll a 6, that just causes an extra wound for morale damage. The thing that people seem to get confused by are the scaling effects. Those only scale off of the actual true Dark Power pool. You cannot have an Archimandrite cast Blasphemous Power to have carries or something else treat the power pool as being one higher, and use the Stratios Supremacy to have them count as being one higher, and say, cool, it's turn 2. My carries roll 12 dice, and every 6 you roll will deal 4 damage. It's like, no, that don't work.
Yeah, that's... So the Dark Power Pool increasing spells and abilities do not stack. It's only the Memories of Old that have +1 on them that do stack when you action or draw event. What is a very good clarification, because sometimes you get into weird stuff.
I see a lot of things like, oh, so the Archimandrite I can have an Archimandrite cast Blasphemous Power on his own regiment, and then now that he's counting as a tier higher, he gets to heal more. It's like, no. Can't do that. Before I forget, also at tier 3, the very important thing is everything in your army, as long as it's undead, with the Animate Vessel rule, is always inspired.
Yeah! Fixing problems.
It'll probably take until about turn 5 or 6 to get there, depending on how quickly you're letting your stuff die. And I guess that's another problem that some new players might want to consider is I occasionally see people that are new to the faction or just that don't play the faction that are kind of rightly or wrongly feeling frustrated about fighting Old Dominion that say, you just have to have all your stuff die, and then by turn 3 you're tier 3. It's like, so you basically at like turn 3 or 4, you've got like 3 or 4 tokens out of the 18 needed. So if you have the other 18, or the other 14 needed to get there by turn 3 or something, you got punked.
That's what, 18 or 14 stands that are dead? That's minimum 2 large units and probably something small?
Like either your objective grabbers are dead, the legionnaires, or your ghosts are dead, which, I mean, the ghosts are kind of there to get in the way and die, but they're also really useful, so you don't want them to get completely wiped out.
Only the Mores. You're getting wiped out. The Curies, you want to live for that insanity.
Or if something has gone catastrophically wrong, your big things like your Praetorians or your Cataphracti or your Bone Golems are dead, in which case, oh, son, you fucked up real bad.
I'm going to tell a small story. I have never seen an Old Dominion player deflate more than having a tier 3 Fallen Divinity die like a token away from hitting tier 3.
Yeah, that's basically.
And then losing all those tokens or this dark power pool. Yeah, it's
Yeah, because as it stands, if your fallen divinity runs off of a separate pool just for her, because she doesn't like sharing with the rest of the class,
very selfish.
She basically is a super solo, and if she dies, your army that's not re-released back into the ether for your rest of your army to soak back up. That just evaporates with her. Your army's stuck at tier 1 probably, and your odds of winning have just plummeted.
Yeah, it's it's really sad, but it's also like we'll get more onto the Fallen Divinity because she's her own whole topic of like what she is doing and trying to achieve. But yeah, just be careful with your stuff and all. Like, so I've noticed that like before the update for Old Dominion, they were too leaning towards bringing up like basically too much chaff to get your dark power pool to a relative point so that your work regiments, usually your heavies, because in the Old Dominion roster, a lot of the heavies are your heavy lifters, like they are your workhorse units in the faction, and they want that tier 2, tier 3 buff and getting that work done and using their memories of old and all that stuff. But before the update, Old Dominion players were taking too much chaff regiments like legionaries and so on to die to power up these things and then just didn't have enough stuff. Now it seems to have leaned over that the work regiments, you can bring more work regiments and less chaff because of you're getting +1 every turn, the generation from the Hero Deacon, and I believe did the Dark Power Pool numbers required for each tier, did that change at all? I don't think it did off the top of my head.
So it not recently, but when it started, I think it was originally 2 tokens lower for each tier.
Mm-hmm.
Then they bumped it up by +1. Although at that time the Blasphemous Soma was still an actual like upgrade that you took on a character for 40 points. It was so mandatory that they switched it to being an army rule, but in doing so said, well, we don't want you to feel pigeonholed into taking it. We want to free up more options for army list building. So that was great. Also, we want to make sure that you can hit your tiers a little faster. By the way, since you get it for free, we're not bumping up the tier requirements by 1 again. It's like, but
yeah.
Also, at the time, it only took effect once your warlord was on the table. So, lacking a light regiment that your characters could come out in, it would only take effect during the supremacy phase. So, or at the end of the supremacy phase. So basically, you weren't benefiting from it until turn 3. Now that it's every turn, it's much more reliable, much faster. So, I mean, like a year ago when it was the worst of all worlds, you needed more tokens. You came online slower. If you had a lot of heavies, they were coming in on 2s on turn 3. If you had bad rolls, like I'm kind of infamous for now amongst my friend group, it's very possible that your heavies don't show. Like you might get one heavy by turn 4, and your other heavies might auto on at turn 5. At which point, cool, you haven't really been playing the game.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Lords and Spires and Waldron have just kind of been, popping and locking on the objective zones for the last, few rounds. So you can kill them, but good luck catching up with some of the runaway scoring mechanics in the wrong scenario. Like if you got caught out on something like, I'm blanking. I guess like something like Divide and Conquer, things like that, where they could at the time just kind of stay in the back zone and just score the whole time. You were in a real bad way. And this is also at the time when they had the long table deployment scenarios where you'd start on like the 4-foot edges instead of the 6-foot edges, and you'd have to. Old Dominion trying to foot slog their way up that was a miserable experience.
Yeah, they're not very speedy. Like they kind of have a couple. Like I know Centaurs are coming out, and I haven't really looked at them, so that's going to help a lot in the speed department. But they were traditionally a very slow faction, and then they've kind of gained some stuff, and people have developed lists that, like, Legionaries are using just Vanguard up onto the table to get onto zones to start generating Dark Power Pool and, like, such. So,
Yep.
but I think those are two different officers, just off the top of my head, so it doesn't even work. But even then, Vanguarding up a unit of Legionaries, like just an MSU, to just sit on his own and start scoring it on turn 2 is super good, and also just being the way to die, super good.
Yeah, they're for their points cost and how durable they are relative to that, even though they're only defense 1 plus shield. They certainly get in the way like no one's business, and one of my favorite certified classic Old Dominion moments is having 3 of them parked on an objective, not quite zoning the whole thing off, but my opponent had a 5 block of Ashen Dawn march charge into them. The impacts killed everything but 1 stand, so I had them rally. They got their memorable the draw event, and knowing that a stand of Legionnaires is not going to be able to counteract a 5 block of unharmed Ashen Dawn, I just let them sit there and said, cool. Thanks to the memory of old, this command stand now counts as 3 stands, so no one gets the zone. And they were incredibly upset. So they're very good at holding zones far longer than they have any.
Yeah, the no resolve really helps there with their durability. Also, just killed Divine Beast Dancing Lion, so have fun with that one.
Boy, you shot through that pretty quick.
Yeah, when I asked you the question, that's when when you started talking about this whole conversation is when I opened up the doors for this fight, so.
Boy, you'll be through the DLC by the time I'm done rambling.
Yeah, don't worry. We got all night, baby!
It's free entertainment. I won't hear any complaints from the audience.
Yeah. Mostly people like it. However, so my next question for you is the same question, but tailored towards experienced players. So if you're an experienced player, you've played let's say you've been playing for 2 years, you get a game in every, like, twice a week, or maybe even more. What is, like, if you're playing as Old Dominion, what are things you're looking for, and then if you're playing into Old Dominion, what are things you are looking for to, like, either strengths or weaknesses in that aspect? We kind of talked about how newer players will make certain mistakes playing into and against them, but now let's talk about the more experienced players. So people have a fundamental understanding of the game and tactics and some strategies.
So I guess playing into Old Dominion, by now you're certainly aware that turns out that defense 3 on, like, the beefier units, or defense 3 plus shield, or things like that, like, Cannophores are really hard to put down at defense 3, no resolve, hardened 1, and evasion 2.
Mm-hmm.
But against ranged, you don't get the blessed roll. Against magic, you don't get the blessed roll. So if you hose them, it's still defense 3. That only gets you so far.
So guns are good.
Guns really are good at whittling down Old Dominion, especially if they have to spend a few turns approaching that you can get pot shots in, and then having to spend a turn or 2 chewing through, whatever screen you have in front of them. Ranged already doesn't care about doing resolve damage unless you're playing slingers, in which case, you're already bullying Old Dominion enough by playing those. So yeah, just whittle them down with a bunch of shots. Since a lot of the infantry is March 5, if you flank that big Praetorian block from the side, yeah, you're probably just ignoring the shields because they can still get Bastion on their flank, and they don't care about the resolve, but at the same time, it's 1 less point of defense. If you have Cleave, or especially Linebreaker, that's really gutting them. And on top of it, because they're a measly March 5, they're going to have a hell of a time trying to reform in a way that keeps the command stand and the character in the front rank. So odds are good that they're kind of just going to be stuck there like an idiot while you just constantly whittle them down.
Mm-hmm.
Keeping them off of zones, it's a little harder now that Legionnaires got a little bit of a speed boost, and Praetorians can hit the table turn 1, but
yeah, that one's real rough for a lot of players.
if you can kind of get your stuff onto a zone so that they can't get past, like onto the zone themselves, and just kind of have a sacrificial unit kind of there to kind of, slow their advance, and also set up an unfavorable charge. So if they charge you, they expose a flank, or they're not getting as many bodies onto the zone as they'd like, or gumming up their own lines. Those are some options. If they don't position as well, which I guess is less likely at higher levels of play, but if you can get to their characters, like some of their most important characters, like, yeah, they're not taking resolve, but the higher deacon and the archimandrite are 4 wounds a pop, evasion 2. They're clash 1 with three attacks each. So unless something goes catastrophically wrong, you're probably winning that. So you can bully them really, really bad in a duel scenario, if especially if you can break them. That's another thing I should mention, going back a little bit to new players on both sides of the table. Yes, Old Dominion can be broken through having their numbers decimated normally. Won't happen through morale, but if they lose half of their stands that they started with the round with, then yes, they still break, and yes, they can still shatter after being broken.
Yeah, that's actually a really good one, because a lot of players I know, even locally, it's always the question of like, well, because Old Dominion don't take resolve, do they break? And it's like, well, I there's times, so I don't know. I have a weird thing where I like play a ton of Conquest and then go to work and don't interact with the game very much at all. So it's like, oh, I come back and now I haven't played Old Dominion in a while. I'm like, oh yeah, do they break? I always forget if they do, and it's like, yes, they do break. That's I should have like a sheet of paper, like a cheat sheet or something. It's like Old Dominion breaks. It says here on this piece of paper.
Yep. I guess also at current high levels of play, you're probably aware of the Praetorian Guard hate block. It'll have Tenacious. It will have reroll 6s. If you don't have any cleave or AP or anything to get through the shields, and you're shooting from the front or going in from the front, that's going to be 3s, rerolling 6s, drop 1. If they get Bastion off, that could be anywhere from 4 to 5, 5 at tier 3 only, but still, at that point, it's really hard to do chip damage on them with range things, but it's kind of about knowing the matchup and knowing, okay, this has ways to get around their bullshit defense.
Mm-hmm.
Send this into them. Don't send something with a bunch of cleave into a pack of ghosts.
Yeah, they'll just take that on the evasion.
Their defense 0, evasion 2, so not a great decision. So it's kind of knowing what your priority target should be for a given regiment, and just kind of knowing your favorable matchups into Old Dominion stuff, volume of hits, objective play, and knowing how to deal with Aura of Death is a good one.
Let's talk about that one. Please go deeper.
So this is another kind of bugbear for a lot of newer players, is they go straight into something. Either they go straight into something that causes Aura of Death, and maybe they'll do some damage, but the trap's already been sprung at that point. Because the next time they activate, they're going to eat a ridiculous amount of just automatic hits. Or if they get charged first, they're going to take damage from the charge, potentially impacts as well, or charge clash rather, and then they activate and then they take Aura of Death. Once you kind of know that you can kind of play whatever's been contacted by Aura of Death a little later in your turn and use other things to whittle those down, whether it's hitting the Aura of Death on the flanks or using range, because again, bone golems are bigger than your infantry, so your size 1 infantry can be you can target the golems with spells and range over your size 1 infantry. Just do what you can to kind of have other stuff activate first and whittle them down so that you take as little Aura of Death as possible. Bone golems, that's a little bit tougher just because they're so beefy at defense 3, hardened 1, and 6 wounds a stand. Interestingly, they are the one thing that has no evasion in the faction.
Good. They don't deserve it.
They don't. But I just think it's funny.
Fucking bullshit.
So if you, for example, if you have a thing of bow chosen, and they start popping off at the bone golems, and you get several ones, you're eating good. A story that I hate because of just how brutal it is, but I was playing a game against Carl the other day when he was testing a brutal Norge list with the Jarl as the warlord. Everything in the army, all infantry rather, I think. Maybe it's everything. I'd have to double check, but basically, if something is shooting you from the flank or from the rear, it gets to reroll all missed hits.
Oh, opportunist, yeah.
Yeah, he had a block of he had a big block of Bochos and aim and volley into my side, and there was a 5 block of bone golems. I think they had like 2 or 3 wounds on them. After rerolls and after all of the not flawless strikes, the
precise. You just say the smite shots. We know what they are.
Yeah, basically the smite shots into the golems who don't have the evasion to rely on. He shattered the entire unit.
God damn.
And I kind of inflated like a balloon that had been left out in the cold overnight, and it was just.
I love that you made the sound effect.
That was demoralizing. Things that can bypass or ideally bypass defense, or there is a lot of hardened in the faction on the big things like bone golems, Canifores, and Varangians.
Bone Divinity have hardened? I feel like she.
Oh yeah, she has.
She has.
She has crazy stupid hardened. It's best to just pretend that she does. Honestly, for the Fallen Divinity, I'd almost say pretend she doesn't exist and just focus on everything else, because she can only be in so many places at once. She can only, despite how killy she is, she can only kill so many things at once. So if you park something just outside of her so that she has to charge clash it, you theoretically, if you can get a slight advantage on their like the Old Dominion's activations, both from winning initiative at the start and also just whittling down their command deck by killing their stuff, at some point you can just kind of start feeding her some little jumpo near death spitter unit, just to tie her up, and at some point she's not going to be able to chew through enough, or she just has to sit on his own for the rest of the game and just not participate, lest she give up scoring.
I kind of treat a Fallen Divinity like Ashen Dawn. If you can kill, like, usually you can kill like five stands of Ashen Dawn and then take out a block of them. So you can kind of do it, but the rest of the army will just maul you to death. So like, you either deal with the army, then deal with the Ashen Dawn, or the Old Dominion player reveals their hand too early with the Fallen Divinity, and you kind of take it at tier 2, or you're allowed on tier 3 just to swarm it with a ton of stuff and take it. But yeah, you just kind of feed it one thing until you have an opportunity to kill it or take over the rest of the table, like you've said.
Due to her high points cost and kind of her more general, at least the slightly more competitive list I've seen have been fairly elite, they might hit 10 activations. I think a few are like at 9, so if you can kill some of the chaff, then the Fallen Divinity doesn't really have the bandwidth to keep going on a rampage at some point. Or if they do, you basically just beat them on scoring because they're trying to kill you, at which point you just outscore them, and they've wasted half the game just Pac-Manning through your army. She's kind of a trap in that sense of don't try to fight her too much. But once she hits tier 3, just give up on fighting her. It's not a great trade because she's something stupid. It's like what is she at? She has 16 wounds. March 8, defense 4, evasion 1. She's blessed. She has hardened 2 and tenacious. And then attack-wise, she's 5 impacts, brutal impact 3, terrifying 3, 12 attacks at cleave 3. Don't get into it with her at that point. I think the only thing I can recall overwhelming her was pre-nerf VCI.
Oh yeah, because they're just
where I played into Carl and he rolls his dice and he says, "Steve, I'm real sorry about this, but you have more hits coming in than I rolled dice due to rapid volley. So and they all have deadly shots. So just make sure you don't roll sixes. And I rolled a bunch of sixes, and I'm like, yeah, she's dead.
Aww.
It's like the one time. It's like the one time I think that people have killed her is when Carl just fucking hosed her with pre-nerf VC.
Thanks, Carl.
That's a classic story to tell. Everyone laughs except me. I guess did I miss anything, or I'm kind of feel like I'm rambling at this point.
That's okay. Like, if you'd like, I'm fighting one of those stupid ghost dragons. So, if you would like, we kind of talked about what's good. Kind of like, is there any other strengths or weaknesses we want to talk about faction wise for Old Dominion of like anything that was missed?
Because
we talked about like Aura of Death, we talked about the durability, we talked about their no resolve, we talked about they can still be broken, we've talked about like shooting and magic is still really good with them, flanking them, even though it like isn't you don't get all the bonuses, it's still very good to just do anyway, to reduce their defense, because a lot of that stuff does just have shields, and that's one less defense.
Not too many things, but it does make legionnaires basically go down to victim stats of 1. The Praetorian Guard take a little hit, which is always good, and then if you have anything on top of that can lower the defense further, even better. Cataphracti lose their shields from the side, which is pretty good considering that they're fairly beefy, but they're only 4 wounds, so it's not too hard to shave a horse or two off every round of combat if you're rolling well or going into them with enough cleave. I was going to say strength-wise, they actually have pretty decent magic. The Higher Deacon can make token accumulation go faster for Dark Power or Fallen Pantheon pools. The Archimandrite has both of them have pretty good nukes. Higher Deacon can put Blessed on Bone Golems or Bucephaly. The Archimandrite has a very good healing spell that's kind of a little deceptive. It starts at it's 1+ tier of the Dark Power pool.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't scale Fallen Divinity, and you're only healing 2 initially, but by endgame, you're healing like 4 or 5. And the real nice thing is that you only need 2. It's not per success, it's just if you get 2 successes to cast it, the spell goes off and it just heals the flat amount. So it kind of starts kind of lame, but ends pretty decent for only needing 2 dice.
That's not bad. It seems like a lot of Old Dominion stuff is like, it starts kind of lame, but then it gets better.
Yeah, that's not a bad way to look at it. If there's something else I've forgotten it, and I'm sure I'll blurt it out like an hour from now or something.
Works for me. Okay. Well, do you want to go into warbands then? Because I think we've covered, like, kind of overall, generally, like, what Old Dominion is doing and ways to, like, deal with it, and also what the strengths are. And I feel pretty good with that. Like, Old Dominion kind of has its game plan of, like, grind and attrition, and so if that's its only game plan, there's not much to really talk about that. Like, it's not going to be, it's not as fluid as like something that Nords and Spires have. So like I'm kind of fine with that with factions as well. Also just kind of, I wouldn't say they're one-trick ponies, but having a certain identity and game plan when they play and how they feel on the table. And I think Old Dominion does that really well with grind and attrition.
Yep.
Okay.
Let's see. Warbands.
Yeah. My next one though. Oh, also, listeners, if you can snipe out the characters, do it. Like, especially the caster characters, Higher Deacon and Archimandrite, just do it. It'll help you so much.
Casters, feel free to bully them. They're usually pretty lame. They're probably not. They could potentially get all their 3 hits in on ones. and you could potentially fail all of them and all the morale checks and have your character die. It's pretty unlikely. Be a little more cautious about the Stratios because he's probably
got too much defense.
More defense since he's probably rocking with the Praetorians, and then the Kiliarch. Try that one at your own risk. He's got cleave, he has flurry, he's got a bunch of attacks. He's not super defensive, but he's got 5 wounds and no resolve, so he could potentially tank it and really hurt you back.
So let's get into those warbands. So let's start with the Archimandrite. Tell me about this character, what's good, what's bad, maybe relevant upgrades, and then we'll get into his warband.
All right. Well, being so his stat line's not great. 3 attacks, clash 1, 4 wounds, defense 1, evasion 2. Please don't get him into combat if you can avoid it.
He's the wizard problem.
He is a very good buffer, though. He can give something or death equal to your current dark power tier. He can heal things, as we already discussed. He has a little nuke spell, Unholy Baptism, which is hitting on 3s, AP 1, 12-inch range. And he can also target something, a friendly regiment within 12 inches, and let it treat the dark power pool as though it were 1 tier higher, so you can kind of get things running a little more efficiently, kind of early to mid-game. Maybe get something always inspired a little bit early for a turn, or early on give the Praetorians that so that they can double march while still getting the benefits of Bastion from their memory of old. So just a very useful support piece. His supremacy ability is pretty great. I think it's one of the probably 2 best in the faction. You get 2 spellcasts a turn, and then once per round or once per game you can choose to re-roll all of your failed spell dice for that round.
Is that only for him, or is that for all wizards?
That's just an Archimandrite thing.
Oh, okay. Well, that's not bad once per round. Like,
because once again, it's one of those things where it's like, no, you absolutely will not in any world allow a block of carries to re-roll all of their spell dice.
Yeah. Watching people explode, it's like, oh, this is exactly what I want to do today.
Yeah, it's just like, oh, cool, I rolled 12 dice and I got to re-roll everything. Well, out of 12 dice, I got 11 of them, so that's going to be 22 hits. Don't roll 6s. That's like, yeah, no.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that is very fair. I wouldn't mind if it said like characters with the wizard or with the priest X special rule get to reroll, because then that gets rid of the Curies, but then gives it to like the higher deacon, or if you're running a bunch of angry.
But she has another. So I guess I'll get to one of her spells in a bit, but it's basically another nuke spell where it's like, cool, you do your hits and then you do 3 additional hits equal to the power pool. So that's another one of those where it's like, cool, I landed all 6, or if I took an upgrade on her, it's like, cool, I landed like all 9. Now take an additional 3. So I could see where that would be a bit of a
problem. Yeah,
a little bit of a bad one.
Old Dominion's already doing well enough. They don't need more OP shit.
Yeah. Upgrade wise, a lot of people seem to miss it. He can take 2 Dark Blessings, which are what the Masters are called for Old Dominion. And he can have a single treasure. He cannot take the armor options, but he can take a weapon, he can take a banner, he can take the arcane things. I would say the standouts for him would probably be Dark Blessing wise or Mastery wise. Devoted to Hasley is not a bad option. It's kind of a budget priest dice upgrade in that you reroll spellcast rolls of 6.
Yeah, it's the best focus you're gonna get for Old Dominion.
Yeah. Honestly, I'd take something like that in Sorcerer Kings if they could get it. It hurts not rerolling any dice and failing all my stupid spellcasts.
Oh, don't worry, I'd take that in Dwag as well. Like, I'd take that. If that was available in any faction, I'd take it. But like, focus exists. Like, if there was focused and that in factions, I'd be like, yeah, done. One wizard gets this, the other one gets focused. Done.
Yeah, well, I mean, for 15 points, it's a pretty good filler pick. I really like the Consecrated Mitre. So for 25 points, you get 1 extra priest die when spellcasting. equal to the dark power pool. So if he is your warlord, or if I guess if he's your warlord, you get up to 3 additional spell dice by the end of the game. So that's pretty good. He's already 7, so he goes up. He starts at 8, effectively goes up to 9, caps out at 10. If you have the Stratios or Kiliarch as your warlord, you can get the tier 4, so he caps out at 11.
Yeah, the Gatling gun Archimandrite build. I remember that.
Yep. Yep. Basically, he's going to get spells off if he wants them to, and if he feels like targeting Youth Unholy Baptism, you can expect some grief coming from that. He has another one that I used to be really big on, but I kind of used it as a crutch for sloppy positioning. It is the the Consecrated Miter is a good one. I'm sorry, Consecrated Miter is the 25-point extra dice. Unholy Sacrament is the 30-point other treasure you can take that I think is worth it. That one basically lets him target anything in his warband, not the army, warband, anywhere from on the board for his spells. So he can heal any of his regiments on the board, anywhere they are, regardless of distance. He can buff them from across the table, from relative safety. It's not bad, but I think it's just a little teeny tiny bit expensive for what it does, considering that. I mean, the heal's always good. Setting things on fire with extra AOD could potentially be good, although that has a hard cap if you use it. It can't go above 5, which, poor me, only getting AOD 5 as a max. And Blasphemous Power. But considering that you don't want to be too spread out, I mean, honestly, a 12-inch range for everything except the AOD spell, which is capped at 8, but I mean, realistically, his legionnaires are marching in 12 inches when they first come on the board. Your fastest stuff is probably going to be 6 inches up the table, turn 1 anyway, so you're probably going to be able to run a fairly tight, kind of castle formation as you kind of march up the board, so realistically, he shouldn't have to be too far from things, so you'd probably get more value out of the additional dice.
So if you're still learning your positioning, maybe take it just for his warband. But as you get better at the game and tighten yourself up, it's just something you drop.
Probably, yeah. You either swap it out for the miter, or if you're going for a more stand-heavy build, I think as some people have said it, boys over toys. Just take.
That's really good. Okay, that's actually really, really good.
I think that's either a Ben or Carlism. I don't remember which, but I'll just say both their names and I'll be right either way. Yeah, but taking additional stands might be decent because 25 points it's not enough for a stand of anything, but it's a good chunk of a stand. So if you trade something else somewhere else in the army, you can probably get another stand somewhere if you need it.
Yeah. I always find upgrades weird because it's like, okay, do I take another stand or do I take an upgrade? And then I start looking at it. I'm like, usually the stand says it's better. Any faction, it seems like it's very like that upgrade has to do so much more lifting to be worth more than a stand.
Yeah, although in Old Dominion, it's nice because the Praetorians obviously like extra stands, carries like extra stands. Thankfully, Legionnaires don't. Nope. They are not. It is more expensive per extra stand than you pay per stand in an MSU, and they don't really get a lot of offensive or defensive boost from that extra stand. So
no, and you're usually just wanting them to die. So
yeah, they're just MSU objective grabbers that get in the way, and occasionally, if you can flank something with them, then they might actually do a decent chunk of damage. But for the most part, they're just there to get in the way and be a distraction and sit on zones so that your more important things can have free reign to go and cause trouble. Warband wise for the Archimandrite.
Yeah, let me just open this up. So we got Legionaries, Cultists, and Curious for mainstay. You want to talk about Legionaries now, or do you want to save it for another character?
I might as well get them out of the way. Oh boy, they're so good.
Is this your S tier in unit rankings for Old Dominion? It's like
probably just do the value that they bring. I mean, it's 100 points for an MSU. They get a free banner. the banner, they have an ability called Forced March, where the banner, instead of giving +1 extra inch on their second march action, gives them +2. So if they double march, they're moving 12 instead of 11.
Mm-hmm.
Their defenses are crap. It's 1+ shield and 1 evasion. I guess the 1 evasion is not bad, but basically they're probably saving on 1s. 4 wounds to stand, clash 2, can't inspire outside of a charge or tier 3. Their memory of old is great because you basically count the command stand as 2 additional stands, so an MSU suddenly turns into 5 for seizing.
Yep. Or 3 if it's just the 1 stand left. It's still really good.
Yeah, kind of as I mentioned earlier, because odds are good that not taking resolve, it's entirely possible that you have the stand drop down to just being a single stand, but they can't quite finish you off that round, so they survive just a little longer than you'd like them to, or your opponent would like them to, rather, and then they just zero out the zone, so that's always nice. They're great. They're also kind of a universal mainstay in that everyone can take them. Up until recently, everyone had to take them because there weren't really that many other options.
Yeah. Actually, yeah. Well,
Because as we'll get to, carries and Mori cannot be joined by a character.
Yeah, well, it's kind of an issue for them. Well, not anymore. I want to say it's not much of an issue anymore, but it used to be for the past year and a half, or since Old Dominion came out. It was kind of an issue for them.
I mean, it basically meant that without cultists or assassins, your priests had to take legionnaires to hit the table. But yeah, legionnaires are great. I would say starting out, probably 9 stands is a pretty happy number to start with. I prefer to run them as MSUs, regardless of if characters in them or not, but just run them as MSUs. Just learn to get good at kind of keeping your characters safe, because, again, they don't scale very well offensively or defensively with extra stands. They're 100 for an MSU, they're 40 points extra per stand, so that's a lot that could be going towards something that will actually make a material difference in your game. But 9 stands to start's pretty good. Maybe I probably wouldn't go beyond 12 personally, just due to how heavy I run things. But 3 stands, 3 MSUs is a really good starting point with legionnaires. Cultists just came out.
What's your thoughts on them?
I really think they're cool. They do look like weird monks that have taken a bit of a wrong turn down the road to cannibalism and self-flagellation and whatnot. They got the weird cuts and cracks in their arms. They're bluish, pale from malnourishment and lack of sun. They look great, but they're one of the weird ones out because they're one of the 2 units currently in Old Dominion's army list that are not actually dead yet, which means they have to take resolve like fucking chumps.
Also, they have another problem of not committing to the Dark Power pool.
Yeah, because they're not dead, they don't have Haslea's essence inside of them, piloting them around, and when they die, they just die and you don't get anything for it. There's no reward for your stuff dying, so that's kind of bullshit.
Yeah, so
they do have some potential benefit, maybe, in that. Well, so it used to be an easier argument when legionnaires used to cost 120 and cultists were 90, and they were light versus medium. So back when characters could score and legionnaires are more expensive, it could be argued, well, you're getting. Yeah, they don't contribute anything, but you can get an Ire Deacon onto the table a turn early and have her start generating early. You're also saving 30 points, and they have a 12-inch range attack, which is a nice little utility because Old Dominion kind of sucks at ranged for the most part compared to other factions. It's not really one of their strengths.
Mm-hmm.
Now that they're 90 versus 100 for the Legionnaires, it's kind of
Why?
That equation that mental math has changed real starkly there.
So let's just do it theoretically here. If Legionnaires went up to 110 points, would you still be taking Legionnaires over Cultists, or would you actually throw some Cultists in? Legionnaires stay the same; they just go to 110.
It's possible that I might pop a thing of Cultists in for an Ira Deacon just to get her on the table turn early. She can start generating a token on turn 1. She technically has a new spell with Cultists and Assassins in mind, in that if they die, they generate tokens. Although I'm not sure I really like that spell, because if I'm taking them as a character bus, I really don't want to get any tokens off of them, because that means my characters are dying.
Yeah.
Don't let that die. That's kind of like voice. So I'm taking a spell that rewards me for being bad and letting my character's regiment get torn apart. I mean, some of the potentially, like, it's only a 12-inch range on their attack, but I mean, a little bit of extra shooting might not be terrible. They're also lethal demise, which could maybe dissuade people a bit, but the secret with lethal demise, much like Aura of Death, is don't attack them in melee with the thing that you're in contact with them. Just have other stuff like shoot them or get into them, and don't take the lethal demise. But yeah, I don't know. They have victim stats. They're not very economically priced relative to the huge amount of value the Legionnaires are bringing right now. They might have some cases, like use cases that I haven't really thought of yet, but I'm sure at some point someone will do something wacky with them. But right now, I'm just kind of thinking, those are really cool models. I'll use them one day.
Yeah, so Cultists right now kind of don't really have a spot in the Old Dominion game plan, and like they're pushed up by Legionnaires.
Carries. Mwah.
Okay, let's go to them. Yeah, a good unit.
They've always been pretty good. Briefly at 2.0, when the new edition came out, they were nerfed into the ground, but they're back, baby, and they're more annoying than ever. These are a fantastic little light unit. They have innate loose formation, so they're really hard to shoot. They're really hard to hit with spells. They are defense 0, evasion 2, so cleave, armor piercing, brutal impact.
Wait,
they have.
Curies have brutal. No, yeah, never mind. No, keep going. Sorry.
If something goes.
I misheard you there. I was like, man, they have brutal impact too? What the fuck? No, that's not how that works.
Yeah. Well, first of all, if they have loose formation, they can't have impact attacks. I digress. They have a whopping Clash 1. Don't rely on them in melee combat unless something's gone catastrophically wrong, because they have a volley attack. Only 12 inches. Barrage 3, volley 2. They have sure shot, so they will ignore the effects of terrain when it comes to targeting their target regiment. And they are also priest +1 per stand, which is the big thing, because they can cast spells, and they have 2 that are very annoying.
Yeah, let's go over them.
So the less exciting one is Drain Will. Attunement of 3, 12-inch range, and it is scaling. Basically, if you have 2 successes, or basically if the spell goes off, the target takes -1 defense. That's the real meat of the spell. There's a little fluff thing where if you get 4 or more successes, your target also takes a whopping 1 total extra hit from any Aura of Death effect. So if they take Aura of Death 16, they're taking 17 now.
Wait a minute, it's not per stand, it's just +1 Aura of Death. What? Jesus Christ. That's so. I think I was talking to Aaron from Just Roll Runs the other day, and he was talking about one of the upgrades in Sorcerer Kings is basically just gives Aura Death +2, but it's not per stand. It's just on top of everything else +2.
I think they just get Aura of Death too. I don't think they have a +2 effect, to my knowledge.
Oh, that's wonderful.
But yeah, you're really there for the fact that something has just taken -1 defense. It's kind of like a slightly less cool version of Induced Lethargy. But the fact that it doesn't just go off, you actually have to roll it, which poor me. But yeah, if you have a lot of Aura of Death and something is suddenly at -1 defense, that hits that much harder. Fantastic. The other spell is the real standout. It is called Insanity. That is attunement 3, 10 inch range, no scaling. And remember, these things are priest +1, and their memory of old is an additional priest +1, capping out at 12 for the regiment. For each success on 3 or lower, that is 2 hits. These hits make a defense roll against the lowest unmodified resolve characteristic in the regiment. So it ignores regiment size, it ignores character resolve. So if there's you could have I'm trying to think of a good example, but I guess I can't think of anything super cool. But basically, if
you could take like a hold ray and a massive block of initiates, and then it would be like resolve 7 on like a 6 block of initiates, and then it's still resolve 2 because it targets the lowest.
Okay, that's a good example. Yes, let's go with that.
Because I think we had that. Did we have that game?
Possibly, but you sent your flame berserkers into the carries, and they're like the one thing in Dweg that just does not get any. About that.
But we were doing like positioning, and I was gonna drop initiates over that side. I'm like, nope, because you're just gonna insanity them all to death. Because that's the perfect target for you, so I couldn't drop them on that side of the table.
So after you take your defense rolls, using morale. Now keep in mind it's using morale. It is not a morale test. The spell does not actually cause morale tests after any damage is taken, because you're attacking their morale already. But defense rolls of 6 against Insanity will cause additional hits equal to the Dark Power Pool. So at Tier 1, 6s cost 2. Tier 2, they cause 3. Tier 4, or Tier 3, they cause 4. And if you're at Tier 5 and they're somehow still alive at Tier 4, they are causing 5 fucking wounds on every 6 you roll. So look at Ashen Dawn.
Yeah, I watched Ashen Dawn explode because of that.
Honestly, as much as I think it's funny, they really need to rein that in. That's fucking wacky.
It is. It's there's it doesn't have very good counterplay for a lot of regiments because it targets that lowest resolve. Like if it just targeted their resolve, so like if you were resolve 2 in a big block with a character, and so you were like resolve like that initiate block. So if you're resolve 4 and like 6 of them, you're going up to resolve 6. You're only taking wounds on 6s at that point. Like okay, cool, but also then like the power pool tier, increasing that damage whenever you roll a 6, you can just like lose stands. You don't take resolve on top of that damage roll, I believe, because it's already targeting your resolve.
Correct. It used to be a little more confusing in that it did cause morale at certain tiers, in addition to causing slightly fewer hits per 6 or something, but it was weird. But basically, they got rid of that to just kind of streamline it, but they still kind of need to tone it down. Honestly, it's a problem in that the other day I had, I think, 3 stands survive until late game. I think all that was left was a big block of Ashen Dawn that were tied up with other things, and these stupid little carries, 3 stands, so priest 3, draw that memory of old up to priest 6, memory of old is action at tier 3, up to priest 9, they rolled their dice. I think that with like 4 successes, that was 8 dice. I think you rolled like 3 or 4 6s, which are the only thing that can hurt the Ashen Dawn, and it's like, cool, don't matter. Each of those is 4 wounds.
Yeah.
And this 3 little stupid, this 180 points of carries chunked like a bunch of Ashen Dawn. It's like, no, that's probably not okay.
Yeah, it's a little crazy. Like at tier 1, it's actually still good. It's a great spell for all it's doing, because it like a lot of lights don't have very high resolve. Like, I'm looking at like Merc crossbows. What's another light that comes on? Like hunters. Like a lot of things usually resolve 2 or 3. So even then, like they're still getting a ton of work in just off their base attack at tier 1. But as the dark power pool grows and they go into late game, like keeping Curies alive into late game, you're just printing money. Like the government cannot control the amount of money you are printing at this point. Like you're hitting Zimbabwe dollars level of money.
And I guess that's kind of a quick revisit to things that new players might struggle with.
Curies.
make the carries go away if you can. Again, volume of hits is really good into them because a lot of hits into Evasion 2 doesn't pan out that well. You cannot let them survive. They become a big problem in late game if they can get those extra spell dice in and just extra wounds on 6s and just scream your head off.
Yeah. So what's a counter to Curies? Let's talk about that. Because I know a lot of people are gonna have problems into them.
So, kind of as I just said, just a large volume of hits. Like for example, if you're playing Sorcerer Kings, if you can get Sword Dancers into them, cool. 3 impacts each, stand, hitting on 3s, possibly 4s, or possibly 3 rolling 6s, and then 6 attacks per stand on the Clash. Like on a charge, that's 4s rerolling 6s, probably with Jadu up. The carries mathematically are probably going to explode, and the problem goes away. Another thing is that it's not a guarantee, but considering they're hitting on 3s, if you can get interference on something or on the target or around them in general, hitting on 2s is less exciting. So that could kind of calm them down a little bit while you get something else in position to deal with them. Don't shoot them, don't use magic. Loose formation basically shuts that down pretty hard.
Yeah, you need a fast melee thing to get into them.
Please do not put anything with high cleave into them. You are wasting that cleave on them. They're going to laugh at it, and seeing someone do that is basically the number one thing I want to see them make the mistake with into carries, because if my carries are soaking up the cleave and not carrying with evasion 2, then something that hates evasion or hates cleave is in my army is not going to be dealing with it. So that's well. So I guess from there I can transition from carries into the restricted.
Hold on. Defensively for Curies, something with high base resolve at low tiers will kind of stay alive as well. Like Flame Berserkers.
Probably. I guess another big thing. Stay if you have to approach them, try to stay and your activation like 16.1 inches away from them.
Yeah.
You're within volley range at that point because they're March 6, range 12 on the barrage. They're still probably going to have to march volley, so they're hitting on 2s, which isn't as good, so you're taking less damage that way. But the important thing is they're March 6, range 10 on Insanity. If you're 16.1 inches away at least, they're not going to be able to draw event, march, Insanity you. Yeah. So that really cuts a lot of their potential damage out of the equation. So just kind of know their threat ranges and, kind of put something into them with hopefully decent resolve relatively early on before they get too wild with Memory of Old, and then just kind of make them explode.
No, that's good. We talked about Curies Cultists. You want to go into Moris?
Mori, since they are the counterpart to the carries, as it were. So
they're best friends.
So the Mori are basically cultists that were pushed into the pyre that lost their minds. Carries are the ones that were a little more put together. Mori didn't fare so well. They're kind of just on fire and very screamy. They are the melee counterpart to carries. There are a few problems with them in that whereas carries are cheaper and the carries are 160 per mana. That's really good. Mori are the ones that are 180. So Mori are 6 attacks per stand, March 6, Clash 2, can't inspire outside of the charge. They are also AOD 3, which potentially gives them a decent little bit of damage output. The problem is that they don't have loose formation, so pretty weak to getting shot as they advance. That kind of really limits their defensive output compared to the carries. 4 more points, and they compete with bone golems for restricted slots, so that's a lot of black marks against them. Their Memory of Old is they gain Cleave 1, not Cleave plus 1, it does not stack, so just Cleave 1, and then they are not innately priests, they need Memory of Old for that, so They won't be interfering with spells. They won't be spell casting. Their spells aren't that great, really. On top of that,
Well, they have the move through buildings because they're like half ghost spell. I know that one off the top of my head.
so that's true. They do have translocate, which is immediately make a free additional 8-inch march, ignoring all regiments, terrain, etc. Has to end in a legal position. The problem is that it says you can use it while engaged. You can't use it to really phase through the enemy and then pop up behind them and stab them in the back because you're ending within an inch of an enemy regiment, so that won't work. And then on top of it, because they're priest +1 per stand and they don't have it as an innate ability, you are giving up one of your actions probably to cast that at tier 1, so that's not going to be great. Needing 2 successes in scaling, I don't think you could. So it's scaling attunement 3. So if you were if you were 5 stands, you'd need all 3. No, you'd need 3 of your dice to cast that. So not great odds, especially if there's interference. And realistically, just you're wasting an action at your early tiers. Tier 2, you get it as a draw event, but you're only 5 spell dice to try to cast it, and quite frankly, you'd probably rather be charge clashing to benefit from just their volume of attacks, their cleave 1, and their aura of death. They do have fluid formation, which is nice. It makes them very mobile. They can really get into places and cause a lot of trouble. Attack at weird angles, flank things. I guess the big problems are just that they kind of suck. That their spellcasting kind of sucks, and they really want that Memory of Old to get their cleave 1, and they compete with bone golems.
Yeah.
For that restricted spot. Speaking of which, that's a great lead into the next thing in their restricted, bone golems.
Alright, let's talk about the greatness of a bone golem as I get killed by a stupid spellsword knight.
Oh, my sons.
Your sons. Alright.
I love these things. They are restricted. They are heavy brutes. They are. I'm going to look this up because I love them so much. You'd think I'd know it by heart, but they are heavy brutes. They are March 6, Clash 2, 4 attacks each, 6 wounds, defense 3, resolve null, and evasion 0. They're obviously undead. They have Aura of Death 3 innately. They have Cleave 2 on those attacks. They are Hardened 1, and they have a whopping Impact 2. Some nice things. They are unstoppable, so they're re-rolling their charge rolls, and they have Relentless Blows. So despite their Clash 2, each hit roll of a 1 will cause an additional hit, which can add up if you spike it with all those Cleave 2s. Their Memory of Old is +1 Aura of Death, so at Tier 2 they get that for free when they activate as a draw event, or as an action if they choose to do that instead for some reason. And then at Tier 3, if you really feel like it, I like to take a swing at something that I'm engaged in combat with. If I kill it, I'll just press move somewhere, reform, march, etc., or charge something else. If I don't kill it, I'll probably just stack Memory of Old the second time as a second action, just so I don't have anything else I can really do. So that will hopefully just guarantee that whenever they do eventually activate, it will finish the job.
Yeah.
They're durable, they're tanky, they're beefy, they're not super fast, but they're also not super slow. Fairly reliable. All that Aura of Death is great. Not great fun for your opponent. Do not run these into a bunch of new people in high numbers because they're probably going to have a terrible time and never want to play the game again. But yeah, they're just real workhorses of the army right now. And they are the basis of a list that I've worked with some people on. They gave it boring names. I gave it the exciting name of Mr. Bones' Wild Ride.
Yeah, no, it's a mean list. I like it a lot because you kind of just make your opponent roll for everything. What I do like, it's kind of the Blood Bowl answer where you're just like spamming Aura of Death onto people.
Yeah, see, my problem is that I can't roll dice to save my life, so I've made a list where I don't need to roll the dice; they get to roll the dice.
Yeah, and it's just like, take Aura of Death 20, it's like, every time you activate, you're like, the Bone Golems still aren't dead, oh god. Yeah,
Oh, yeah. You just left just enough wounds for the Archimandrite to bring back a new one into contact with you.
So, what are bone golems? Because they're such a good unit. What are they like looking to get into fights with? What do they want to see across the table from them? What do they don't want to see across the table from them?
I would say that Order of Death, despite being really good, kind of tapers off more noticeably around defense 4 or higher. So don't probably send them if you could. Well, so it depends because they also have Cleave 2 on their hits, so on their clash deck. So that is always an option. But I mean, sometimes you want to just march charge them into something that normally that's kind of a dumb idea, and that usually just gets your unit killed. But because of all that Order of Death, sometimes you can get away with it if you pick the proper target. Like if there's an annoying ranged unit that's now open up and they're like defense 1 or 2, and you can get the march charge in there, go for it. They're going to be blown up by Order of Death. Things that aren't hardened are good because you can let the cleave 2 kind of, if you can charge clash, the impacts don't really matter, but they're potentially extra little gravy on top. But if you can get some of those a few ones to show up in your roll and at cleave 2, you can kind of soften up the target and then let Aura of Death just kind of wash over them and
Yeah,
make
because
them
they have
pop.
that relentless blows for ones count as 2 hits on cleave 2. Yeah, you did that to me, so it was mean.
That's also probably the best I've rolled them in months.
Don't
I
worry.
remember quite a few ones, and I'm like, where are these at the CWEs?
I need these for all the world points.
They're also not a terrible choice into Ashen Dawn, because Cleave 2, they'll still be able to bless those rolls, but they're down to 2s rerolling everything instead of 4s, and then they can't, because it's not a clash attack, they can't bless against Aura of Death. So if you can just get a bunch of them into contact with them, there is a chance that you might be able to just get some chip damage in from that. So that's another potential option. I'd be a little bit careful about that just because they're Ashen Dawn and they're still going to beat the living shit out of the golems.
Yeah, like even though you're hardened on those golems, they're just the sheer volume of attacks coming in is going to clear them up after a couple turns.
Yep, I was going to say, again, 6 wounds is really good, but defense 3 only carries you so far.
Yeah, but no resolve.
True.
Yeah,
yep.
No resolve, guys. No resolve.
So it's good. I go back to other factions and I have to roll resolve, and I'm like, fuck, did I live like this?
How was I such a peasant before?
You people do this all the time?
You do this by choice?
Let's see. So, yeah, bone golems are great. I love them. Praetorian Guard. They are a premier defensive unit in the Old Dominion because at tier 3, you can double up on that memory of old to get them to defense 5, and then if you properly kit them out, you could potentially get them tenacious, untouchable for rerolling 6s on defense. You can create a really nasty Aura of Death brick because you can take, for 25 points, the Profane Reliquary in them as an officer, giving them, and the character attached to them, +2 Aura of Death. And there's also a banner that does the exact same thing for 20 points. So you can just have a really mean AOD for, murder bunker. They're March 5, they have a shield, they're Clash 2, 5 attacks each. Clash 2, 5 attacks each, 5 wounds each, no resolve. Base defense 2 plus shield, evasion 1. So yeah, again, they're very tanky, but they're probably not pumping out a ton of damage outside of Aura of Death. So like, if you're a City States player and you have like Festering Alloys on like an Eidolon or something, you could probably tank it a little bit, although I'm not sure that's a great option.
Alright, well, if you're a City States player, just take your Talos and just shove it into the Aura of Death.
Well, or you could just go into the side with a chariot, ignore the shields, get your AP 1, make them reroll 1 defense rolls of 1, and just kind of do that and just kind of hose them down with chariots.
Yeah, chariots are real good. I forget what it's exactly called, but the in the flank chariot shots
I think that's exposed. I think that's exposed flanks.
Yeah, I want to say it is exposed flanks as well. That does sound
Yeah,
familiar.
that's a beefy one. These are great. I wouldn't take them with the Archmandrite. Again, they compete with Bone Golems for the restricted slot in his warband, and they are better served elsewhere. Other warbands.
Yeah, we'll talk to that when we get to that character. We'll talk about him then. Or
Oh yeah, yep.
Okay.
And then Propane Sepulcher, not out yet. Haven't seen any concept art for it yet.
I think we can skip him because he might change again. Like he's some weird like taking damage for his health to buff stuff guy.
Yeah, gets buffs for taking damage, can't be healed. He's just kind of a weird case that I'm sure will change over time. Next character, who would you like me to discuss?
We'll do Fallen Divinity last. Let's do the Hero Deacon.
Right. Hero Deacon is basically the other priest. This one cannot be your warlord. Just kind of there to help things move along. Again, a very similarly sad offensive profile, similar to the Archimandrite. Clash 1, 3 attacks, don't do it. 4 wounds, don't get in a fight. I should mention that the Higher Deacon and the Archimandrite are both devout, so that will basically cause any spells hitting your regiment to get an extra success if you are using a priest to cast with them, which is important for one of her spells. So she's really good at jumpstarting your dark power generation. Every round she gets a draw event, Dark Shepherd. She can pick a friendly non-character stand within 12 inches, or regiment, I guess, and then she can automatically do enough wounds to kill a non-character stand in that regiment. In doing so, if it is an animate vessel stand, it will generate dark power as normal. So remove a stand, get a token. You can combo this with the Archimandrite, where she kills something, he activates later and heals it back, and you can just mill that over and over. This draw event can only be activated once per round, regardless of the number of characters that have that ability. She also has a very useful spell called Dark Supplication. So on 6 dice, you are looking for 1s or 2s. She's devout, and it's target self, so you really only need 1 success. If you get it, you generate another token. So she can probably...
It's a 2-mint 2? That spell I thought it was a 2-mint 3.
Nope, 2-mint 2.
Well, I guess we're only looking for like 1.
Yeah, I was going to say with devout, that really kind of goes a long way to getting it off. Keep her away from other priests, because trying to get 1s on 6 dice is not a gamble I would want to take.
No. Also a Null Mage at that point. It seems like a Null Mage is really good if they can get close enough to your casters.
Oh, I was going to say, an Archimandrite with a Consecrated Mitre swinging at 10 dice. Yeah, no, he does not want to cast anything within range of that Null Mage.
My issue with the Null Mage is that the Null Mage has to be within 10 inches of the caster when the caster casts. So, and then if, your opponent sees it coming and they're like, oh, I don't want to get near that thing.
Yeah, but I mean, it can be useful to deny, I suppose. Just where they're like, that side of the that part of the table is just forbidden for me. I digress.
Usually a lot of spells are past 10, or if the buffing, and the buffing spells that are, 8 inches, or basically 8 inches, between 8 and 10, they're buffing friendly regiments that are holding the line and already engagements, and they just sit further back to stay away from the Null Mage, who might try and run at that regiment to engage it to try and get over the edge, but then they're still far away because you just touch their butts of your friendly regiment and you're fine. I have Null Mage issues.
Other spells. Black Flame Coruscation. This is her attack spell. I would really wait on this until you've gotten to tier 3 maybe, because it gets more hits out of it if you successfully cast it, and also if you're not ramping your dark power pool, that kind of feels like a missed opportunity. But basically, looking for 3s, it's scaling, 12-inch range. If you successfully cast it, deal additional hits equal to the current dark power pool. Again, this does not scale with anything that modifies how you treat the dark power pool, it's just the actual pool. So late game, she can just kind of pivot from accelerating your dark power to just kind of zapping things. The next spell is probably, I would argue, one of the most metal names in the entire game. You know, you got like the chapter mage. I get a tropic bolt or a tropic shield or whatever. Like magic missile.
Magic
The,
missiles.
the higher deacon gets benediction of the black sun, which grants blessed to a brute regiment. So, I think this was made with Bucephaly in mind, who are part of her warband. They are undead minotaurs acting as temple guards. Or you could be cool and you could put them on bone golems.
Yeah, or what about Curatids? Can she throw it on not Curatids? No, they already have blessed. What am I thinking? I'm an idiot.
Yeah, Canaphores already have blessed.
No, throw that on bone golems. What am I saying?
Yeah, I would just say the Caryatids are the ones with 20-inch range, and if you're putting blessed on them, you've either got some like fifth dimensional chess gigabrain plan in the works, or something has gone catastrophically wrong. And the last spell is Undying Devotion. That's the one I mentioned earlier that affects cultists and assassins. And that basically just says until the end of the round, any stands of the cultists or assassins that were targeted that die generate a dark power token.
Yay, you can make them useful now!
Yeah. I really hope that doesn't happen because either your character boss is dying or you're losing really expensive stands for a dark power token. Don't do that, please.
Well, could have just been Legionaries.
Speaking of which, we already talked about cultists, we already talked about legionaries. Those are both mainstay for her. She can also take mainstay the Centaur Karakees that are coming out at the end of this month. They are basically undead centaurs that acted as messengers of the gods. The lore for them is actually very enjoyable, I find, in that they were never very devout. They were kind of like, oh, what's this Hasley god stuff? Like, we've never seen him. What's he done for us? Whatever. We get to get cool, winged body armor and these cool ceremonial bows and shit. So I guess we'll just roll with that. Well, it turns out when he was merging with Undeath and was power bombing his sky palace into the ruins of Capitus to kill everyone, they're like, oh, cool, this god actually exists. Cool, we're worshiping now. And by worshiping him in that last moment just before they were annihilated, that basically opened the gateway to make them undead, which is why they look.
I love how they just panic converted to religion to be like, yeah, we're in, good.
Oh right, shit. And because they weren't mummified and they were just kind of instantly killed by the fallout of that and revived immediately. That's why they look so fresh, because they look a little shredded compared to a lot of the other undead.
Always Subway, always fresh.
But they're speedy boys. They I think are 150 per MSU, if I'm not mistaken.
That's pretty good.
Oh no, I'm thinking per drone. I think they're 180. 180 per MSU. They're March 8, Volley 2, which is the important bit.
Are these the mediums? These are the.
So they are both mediums.
Yeah, that's right. They changed. I remember one of them used to be a light, and now they are.
Oh yeah, it with the current Stratios thing, they kind of had to be mediums. But basically, they are a medium cavalry regiment. They have Barrage 3, 16-inch range, AP1, and Deadly Shot, which is kind of nice because that's kind of like a pseudo cleave or pseudo extra AP. So kind of treat them as though they're AP2. They're undead, so they're fast. They shoot. They're size 2, so they can shoot over your infantry regiments, which is always nice. Their memory of old is they gain sure shot, so they get to ignore obscuring for purposes of determining shooting in line of sight and all that. I guess
what's good
number of shots. But fairly solid, fairly decent, fast scoring ranged unit, which is something that Old Dominion is not super big on compared to some other factions. So this is kind of a nice mainstay option. She can't join them, but it's nice to have something that's not Legionnaires for a change. Restricted. She has an interesting restricted warband. So you have the Caryatids that we mentioned earlier, and kind of compare these two in that they are statues animated by the ichor of an undead god that have taken to hunting the living. They are March 6, 5 wounds apiece, I think. Where'd they go? 5 wounds, defense 3, evasion 1. They have barrage 3, 20-inch range, armor piercing 2. And the thing that kind of saves them, because they're only volley 2, the thing that kind of saves them is their memory volt gives them barrage +1 and fluid formation. So they're not great at hitting, and they don't have a huge amount of attack volume until, like, I mean, if once you get them to memory of old at like tier 2, where they just get that and they can aim and volley at 4 shots a stand, that's not bad.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, you definitely don't want them shooting into things with good evasion or hardened. You're kind of losing value there. I guess the big thing is really fluid formation, being fairly defensive. They're medium, so they can score. The 20-inch range, they can reach out and touch things from pretty good distance away. When you march them off the table, they can attack things that turn from 26 inches away, which is pretty damn good. But yeah, just their output's okay relative to their point cost. I kind of, not granted, there's differences between the factions and the buffs and the benefits to each, but I don't know. In my mind, I just can't help but think that they're just 200 point, slightly more durable mercenary crossbow. That maybe hit a little bit harder.
I found that because of their low barrage stat, like, even though they have good AP and they'll put wounds into stuff, what's really good, their low barrage just kind of holds them back. And also, what are they, 200 points off the top of my head? I believe they're 200. Like
200 points and 65 an extra stand. So
yeah,
they're kind of pricey. They're restricted. And I mean, like you said, I mean, if something like has, plus the other problem is that it's a ranged attack, so even if it does get into something that doesn't like the AP2, you're not benefiting from everything in your army having terrifying because it doesn't cause morale. Mm-hmm. So,
but there's a bit of me that's like, it's a back-end scoring regiment that can contribute. I'm like, well, you got your Archimandrite and your Hero Deacon who are also doing that, and they're contributing in other ways, so you're putting too many points in the back-end scoring, what's not very good.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen one nasty combo I've seen a few times is taking your Praetorian hate block and parking Caryatids behind it, so as things try to outgrind the Praetorians, which is already a pretty tall order, they're just getting pelted at effective range, so you're probably taking 5 shots a stand then, aiming and volleying at AP2, so that can kind of do pretty decent. And again, 20 inches with fluid formation, you get a pretty good coverage with that.
Like, yeah, there's a strategy there. I don't really see it per se.
It just doesn't really play to the strengths that I think the faction really exemplifies.
The game plan?
Yeah, I mean, they're a useful support piece, but I basically heard some people with I've heard some people say that basically they're like, well, I know that they're averaging this many shots per stand, even when aiming and volleying at tier 2. I know that I have this many stands, this many wounds, so basically it's just kind of inconsequential chip damage to them, and they're just like, no, I'm going to prioritize everything else because the other things are a much more pressing, immediate threat than like eating a few extra wounds every round. It's nothing that you couldn't potentially like heal away with. Like, I mean, if a chapter mage gets into something with like School of Water and just Ninwa's tears things away, it's like cool. If you're doing a minimum cast, you're healing 5 wounds. So, and at most you're getting like 8 or something. So it's like you're chip damage.
Yeah, or you get into the new play, what is putting +1 defense on Ashen Dawn for defense 5.
I
haven't done that yet, but like it's there. It's sitting in the back of my head. I'm always looking at it where I'm like, I want to be a terror to my meta.
I've run into that a few times. I hate it. Thanks. I guess that's not a terrible use if you do bring them, is that if there is something with Blessed, that's potentially a way to chew through some armor and also not give them the Blessed rolls, so you could use that to kind of plink away at them and kind of soften up the Blessed unit.
Yeah, but then it's like, well, Aura of Death gets around Blessed, so...
Yeah, and it's...
But then it's like, the high defense, but then you can Curies the thing for -1s, and it's defense 3 on Aura of Death, and you're like, you already have built-in combos for just that are more flexible in the faction at this point.
Yeah, because I mean they're not garbage in combat. They're Clash 2, 5 wounds, defense 3, no resolve, and 4 attacks. If you get them always inspired late game, like something could try to charge them to turn them off, and they could probably swing back okay, but they're not doing great. And really, if they're not shooting, then why take them over something better in melee?
Yeah.
Their melee counterpart, speak of the devil, is
talk about the Flaley Boys.
The Canaphores. The hot sister statue to the kind of less popular Caryatid. For 10 points more, you get an extra point of Clash. You get 5 attacks instead of 4. You get defense 3, evasion 2, hardened 1, and blessed.
Yeah, great.
So these things are stupid hard to put down, at least in terms of melee attacks and impact attacks in general, things like that. They can still be chipped away with range and magic, but boy, they stick around a lot longer than they have any right to be. At Clash 3, they are one of our more elite things. They're one of the few things that have an 8 Clash 3. They're also Cleave 1, Impact 2, which is okay, but big thing is Cleave 1. Their memory of old is flawless strikes, so they will just blitz through defense on ones.
Yeah, because flawless strikes is the smite on ones.
Yep, smite on ones. Yep. Which sometimes lets you do funny things, especially to things like Ashen Dawn or Bone Golems.
Well, also they have bless, so if they know they're not going to get a clap back, you can just bless their attack.
That's the thing. So you're basically rerolling everything. Now, granted, usually it is much safer to save that for defense, but if somehow you managed to tank everything and haven't needed to use blessed so far, then yeah, if you know that nothing else is coming for the rest of the turn, then you can use it on the attacks and fish for ones and just burst something down. Yeah, they're pretty good for 210 points. They kind of fall just slightly behind Bone Golems in that they're more defensive, but not having that AOD output really kind of cuts into their potential damage. But they're still very good. Restricted on the Higher Deacon, mainstay for Fallen Divinity.
Yeah, I think we got to come back to them for the Fallen Divinity when we do the Fallen Divinity, because I think they're more relevant in her warband, and when you play one of the Fallen Divinity, then you they are one of the things that she does kind of help out, and they really like it. The question is, will it blend? And the answer is yes. Bucephaly. These are the Undead Minotaur Temple Guard. They're okay. They're kind of hurt by virtue of not being Bone Golems. That's kind of a recurring problem, you'll notice. Yeah.
They're heavy. They're also hurt by the fact that they're the most expensive thing in the army, brute-wise. They are 220 points base and 75 points for additional stand.
Ooh. Wait, can you say their base cost again?
220.
220. Okay, that's not
compared to 210 for Canaphores or Bone Golems.
Yeah. And Varangian Guard, we haven't hit them yet, but they're like 190 or 200.
I think they are sitting at 200 now. Yeah.
Yeah. So
they're the most expensive, and they probably have. They're kind of like a weird in between of the They're like not as defensive as Canaphores, but they're also not as killy as the Varangians or the Bone Golems. They are Clash 3, so that's cool. They're only 4 attacks each per stand. They do another thing is Old Dominion brutes do not get leaders, so no extra die out of that. So 4 attacks per stand. They recently went up to 6 wounds. They're defense 3, evasion 2.
That's really good. 6 wounds is really good.
They're unstoppable, which is nice. I bet their counterparts in the city-states wish they had that. They're only impact 2. Brutal impact 1. They have cleave 3, which is nice, but only 4 attacks per stand, no leader. And their Memory of Old gives them Brutal Impact +1, so they could potentially get to Brutal Impact 2, or if you really felt like being weird, you could double up on Brutal Impact for Memory of Old as a draw event and an action, and then charge something, and if you touch it, you'd be Brutal Impact 3 on Impact 2s, but maybe don't do that.
Yeah.
Outside of a weird flex.
So, like, why take Bucephaloi? Like, I see some people who are like really excited about them. Some are like, whatever. Like, there's just better things in the faction. Like, is it kind of a new player pick for Bucephaloi where they're like, they look cool, I'm gonna take them. They're actually like pretty decent. But then as you get better with Old Dominion, it seems like people shy away from them.
I do think that people really want them to work because they're gorgeous models. They have ornamental headdresses in place of their horns, with like the symbols of the Old Dominion, emblazoned upon them. They have these tattered, vestments and stuff. They have these gigantic mauls that look incredible. They have like their spines exposed. They're like the skin on their back is flayed open. They're half rotted. There's a lot of really great detail for people that like undead stuff with them. But just that right now they're more expensive. They don't have the damage output. I mean, 4 attacks each. That's a little on the light side. And the problem is that for 10 points less, because it's 200 points plus 10 for a standard bearer on the Varangian Guard, you're getting 4 attacks, no impact attacks, but their defense 3, evasion 1, hardened 1. They have an 8 cleave 2, and then their Memory of Old gets them up to cleave 3 with Linebreaker. So if you're going into something with Bastion and or Shields, they're probably going to handle that better than the Bucephaly. I don't know. Again, they're kind of in a weird place where they're the most expensive brood option. They don't really have the volume of hits that the Bone Golems do. They don't really have the defensiveness of the Canifores, and they don't quite have the just ability to just ignore a lot of defensive buffs that the Varangians might have.
I'm going to use this term, but do you think they have, with the already existing Old Dominion heavies, because like the heavies are where the powerhouse regiments are in Old Dominion, do you think they just don't have the design space? Like, they're stepping on too many toes, and so because they would have stepped on too many toes if they went in any other direction, they don't have a job? Like, someone does their job better?
Yeah, that's probably the issue, is that all the others kind of do their own thing just slightly better. So either if they, I don't know, if they took one of the heavies and kind of readjusted them to kind of do something a little bit different, or change the weight class or something to kind of play a different niche.
Was it medium Varangian Guard? Stays as is, goes up 20 points, done.
But I think that might open some space for them. I think they could also probably use like either a leader and or maybe like an extra impact or an extra attack or something. Like I don't know. There's just something that they're kind of falling short on. I was thinking back to like the 1.5 days when they had an officer option that's now been removed because there's no point in making a brute officer that probably won't sell for a niche unit. But it was a thing where it's like, cool, if you successfully charge a target, each stand gets +2 attacks. So basically it really reinforced that they wanted to be charging stuff rather than just kind of getting stuck in combat. So basically it gave you that on the turn of the charge, you get a bunch of extra attacks, and then after that it kind of tapers off. So it kind of really was incentivized to kind of like clean up engagements, just kind of crack through something really quick and don't like linger there. And I don't know, so like if there was some option for that and like an appropriate points adjustment, that would be, I think, interesting. I don't know if it would be good or balanced, but just something to kind of help them out a little more, because right now they're kind of like in that weird limbo of being really expensive but not quite excelling at any one thing.
The boss is using my strategy to beat bosses, and I don't like it. Okay, you know what?
Outplayed.
He's just doing jump attacks. Not fair. I'm only the one allowed to use jump attacks. Now I'm just getting beat up. Here, fuck
well, I guess I'll end the Higher Deacon real quick on the last restricted, the Assassin. These are basically cultists if they traded their Lethal Demise and their Jarate for stabbing people in the back. On paper, they should be really cool. They just aren't because they're living units and they don't play nice with the game plan of Old Dominion. They're 180 points. They're a light regiment. March 6, Clash 2, 7 attacks. Resolve 3, Defense 1, Evasion 2. They're Cleave 1, they have Vanguard, and for 20 points, you can pop an officer in there that gives them Deadly Blades. So, on paper, they'll potentially do a bunch of damage. It's just that at Defense 2, Resolve 3, or Evasion 2, Resolve 3, they're probably just going to get shot to death and die. Or something touches them and they die. They don't have a banner. They don't have Unstoppable, so like 200 points for an MSC with getting them the Deadly Blades, which is kind of mandatory. It's like, all that in a restricted slot for a living unit. That's just kind of not doing it for me, which is sad because I love the models.
Yeah, and also they're not generating Dark Power Pool. It's all about that Dark Power Pool.
Yeah.
I feel if if the current regiments, the Centaurs and the Cultists and Hashashin all came out, I want to say before the update that recently happened. Like I'm gonna call it like the spring update because I think it came out in like February, if I recall, or January, February.
It was just after LVO.
Oh, okay, so then so let's just call it the January update. Like, there would have been a spot for them, but I feel because of that update, they got pushed out due to Legionnaires, and now the faction being more tuned to take less chaff and more work regiments. So you don't kind of need them anymore.
So I will say, at the risk of Stavros sending the Pinkertons to get rid of me, I would almost think that because they look so decrepit and fucked up in their card art, I would say just be like, no, you know what? They just drank the Kool-Aid. They just died. They just popped back to life. They're super fresh. They're undead. They get Animate Vestal. Readjust the points to reflect the being undead bit. Just go with that. Just be like, they just keeled over. They just came back.
They just drinking the Kool-Aid.
And considering the Cherokees and the Centaur stuff did like a similar thing where it's like, oh cool, I just converted and accepted Hasley into my heart. Oh cool, now I'm dead. Shit, now I'm back, and I'm really I'm really spongy and fleshy. I'm not like a little mummified beef jerky boy. Just roll with that and just be like, nope, they're undead now. Just whatever. Because otherwise, I just don't quite know how to make them play nice with the rest of the army to the point where I can take them and not feel like I'm hobbling myself.
Yeah. Like, that... It does suck.
Let's see, what did I...
Yeah, let's do the next character.
Okay, well, 2 out of 6 down. I'm just going to lump the strategy... no, let's do Kiliark next. Kiliark. He's basically your murder character. Clash 3, 6 attacks, 5 wounds, defense 2, evasion 1, cleave 1, and flurry. He kills things, he makes them dead. He can take Legionnaires, he can take Praetorian Guard. I'm not going to go too into the Praetorian Guard, they're kind of the same as the Archimandrite, only difference is he could take them as a mainstay, so...
Yeah, let's just do that interaction. Also, by the way, I just killed a Twin Moons lady, so that's why I had to, like, focus up a little.
Someone stop this man.
What? I'm a wretch. I'll play whatever build I want. I got shit to do. I'm speaking the fuck out of this game. Let's go.
Being able to take Praetorian Guard as a defensive block as a mainstay is pretty sick.
Yeah, let's talk about the OP-ness of this. This interaction.
This isn't the bad one. The bad one is the Castratios. So that's why I said I'm just going to lightly touch on it.
Yeah, let's go.
Legionnaires, we know it. Athenati, don't take them. Moving on. Poor Athenati.
Oh, Athanatoi.
Yeah.
Yeah. So can we can we talk about why they are bad and you shouldn't take them? Because I feel some people like look at them and they go like, "These are amazing. You should take them." It's like, no, like.
So personally, I really like the weird like wiggle dancing poses that they have, and they're like horrible cherub masks and the little halos behind them.
Mm-hmm.
The swords break when you look at them funny. They're super thin, super flimsy. Also, they're just kind of a mess. Like, they're March 5, so they're not super fast. They're Clash 2. You can spend 25 points to make them always inspired with an officer, which is, don't do that. There's 6 attacks to stand, so they blend if they hit. They're defense 2, evasion 1. They have flurry, so I mean they're not inaccurate, but they get shot to death and meleeed to death and spelled to death, and they die.
Yeah, they die too quick. Like Clash 2
Without
flurry with no ability to inspire until like turn 3, or if you're charged, or if you do the charge, just doesn't. It's not enough for offensive output for their point cost.
yeah, like so I think the idea was originally sold as like the Athenati are the offensive legion pick, the Praetorian Guard are the defensive legion pick, and then the Legionnaires are kind of like the weird little objective goobers that just kind of get in the way and score things, and you have to kill them to generate dark power for your Dark Old Dominion player, or just let them score.
Mm-hmm.
Except Athenati are not great at killing things because they die too easy. Their memory of old is parry, so
What now got changed to you don't reroll stuff like kind
well,
of what they do.
in the olden days, it used to be Counter Strike. So if you hit them on a defense roll of 1, you got to hit them back. But
Wait a minute, didn't these guys have bodyguards?
yeah, they also had bodyguards, but they suck at staying alive. So if your character's in there, like they're not very good. They're not good at it. So they got rid of that and gave them Counter Strike. Counter Strike didn't really work because they still die in droves. They gave them parry, which used to be hit rolls of 1 against them had to be rerolled. Then that got changed, so now parry just canceled out any rerolls
So
when engaging
flurry,
them.
blessed,
Yeah,
anything,
four clash actions.
yeah.
So yeah, that's less good, and you have to wait until presumably tier 2 to do anything with it, because if you're not getting it as a draw event, you're not going to waste your action doing it probably. So yeah, it's just a sad situation all around. They made them go down in points, and they cut the standard bearer cost in half. But
Oh yeah, he's 5.
These are a dual kit with Varangian guards, so Varangian guard win. They win hard in that decision. Speaking of which, I guess the Centaur Prodromi. These are going to be cool. They are fast melee centaurs. They are 150 points for an MSU. They are March 8, Clash 2, Defense 2 with Shield, Evasion 1, and they're not super offensive, but Cleave 1 is nice. If you they don't have any impact to start, but the defense 2 with shield, they cleave 1 on 4 attacks. If you get their memory of old off, they get impact 2 and brutal impact 1. So just kind of a little bit of a spike of damage. So basically they're kind of like fast legionnaires, except they're slightly more defensive than they have cleave. They used to be lights, but due to some changes in Old Dominion that we're going to talk about soon, they had to be made mediums, otherwise the early game would be off its fucking tits, and Old Dominion would be a fucking nightmare.
The game already off its fucking tits. Old Dominion, you want to see me do it again?
Well, I mean, they're mainstay for the Kiliarch and the Stratios. So if you have the Stratios taking the hate brick on turn 1, along with 2 things of Prodromi, like 16 inches up the board turn 1, up in your fucking grill, like that would just be a miserable experience for your opponent, and that could continue to be a thing. Beyond that, so Athenati are his restricted pick. Don't take them for reasons already described. The other restricted are the Varangian Guard, which are unique to him. These guys are Chads as far as infantry go. they got nerfed from 6 wounds down to 5. Poor
Oh
us.
no.
They're defense 3, hardened 1, and evasion 1. Or, yeah, defense 3, hardened 1, evasion 1. 4 attacks each. That's fine because they are cleave 2, and if you get your memory of old off, they get to up to cleave 3 and get line breaker. So they're your can opener. Made even better by the fact that the Kiliarch's supremacy ability is that his warband, not the entire army, that's another common beginner mistake, just his warband,
Yep.
get a free additional clash action. So you could potentially march, charge, clash and give them a crazy threat range. If something's already engaging you, you can just double tap and chew through it if they're really beefy. If someone tries to engage you to tie you up, you can clash, charge, and then clash whatever's hiding in back of the screening unit. And when these boys get to swinging, they fucking plow through whatever's in their way. They're great. I love them. I have to roll for those dice, unlike the Bone Golem's AOD, so they've kind of taken a slight back seat, but I do love them. I think they're really neat models, and they're very effective if you want to go that route.
Yeah, no, I think there's been kind of builds, I believe, where people were trying to deal with like Ashendon or something, and like I forget what it was. Like they were getting hit by something, and they were like, "Just take more Varangian Guard until you stop taking damage and can kill them," and then that's when you stop taking Varangian Guard. Like that was the secret tech. But yeah, I like Varangian Guard a lot. They're a really solid unit. I also like their minis. They have like their weird not weird, but like
well, they have the bearded helmet. The bearded helmet.
The helmet. That's what it is. Like I'm like they're wolves. I'm like no, they're not wolf helmets.
They also have a neat little banner with kind of like the Norse kind of serpent or dragon on it. It also has the banner also includes kind of like, I guess, like the hand of Hazliah going to reach down from the heavens to like touch the hands of the his worshippers on the surface of the planet or whatever. So it's just kind of a neat little banner. I kind of painted mine as though the paint was and the finish was kind of flaking off over time. But no, really nice unit. Not a bad option if you want to stick with legions, or if you want something to open a enemy anvil up with.
They're a great hammer.
Great hammer. Also, if you play a lot of Old Dominion, especially the much reviled Old Dominion mirror match, this is a fantastic answer to whatever smartasses. I say that as one of the smartasses that's bringing the Praetorian hate brick, because you're rerolling 6s, dropping 1 wound with Tenacious, and you're at defense 5. That's nice. I'm ignoring all your Bastion and shields. You're doing all that on 1s, nerd.
Old Dominion players also hating other Old Dominion players.
So I'm gonna send you a picture you can just put into the video for this section. Is this a YouTube one or?
Yeah, it's gonna be a YouTube one.
Cool. I'll send you something. It's kind of like nerds who watch anime, and then me, also a nerd who watches anime, and he's like slamming the nerd in the closet or in a locker.
Sure, so, I'll timestamp this so that
similar principle, but I can put some Varangians on there or something. I don't know. Cool. So that's the Kiliarch kind of broadly. I guess common upgrades. He likes his weapon upgrades.
Yeah, let's talk about like what makes him killy, because it's all the upgrades that make him just rip apart stuff.
Yep. So weapon upgrades or weapon treasures are very good. So for example, Skofnung is redundant if you're taking him with the Varangian Guard, because they already have Linebreaker, but that grants Linebreaker to a unit and cleave +1 to the character, so he could be cleave 2. And if he's in, like, heaven forbid, Athenati, that could give them Linebreaker, which might make them do something before they die.
You've chosen death.
Calamitas, for 20 points, which is 10 points cheaper than Skofnung, you get +1 attack on him and +1 cleave, so he's 7 attacks, cleave 2. With Flurry, which is pretty damn good. A nice little 10-point filler, Eleutheria. I think there's some potential hidden tech there as a points filler, because character gains +1 clash, and then exclusively for duels, they gain parry, counterattack, and cleave 1. I'm sorry, cleave +1. So that can be a good little filler pick on like an Ire Deacon or an Archimandrite if you don't want to take one of the arcane treasures on them and just kind of want a little "don't touch me" in a duel. I'm a little scary now.
Don't
It
touch
can
me, I'm
be good.
scared.
It might be good on Kiliarch just for getting a little bit higher clash. Not great though, but really it's just kind of there's a points filler. Just kind of a cute little upgrade. For Dark Blessings, I don't see Kentark taken much anymore. That's basically within 8 inches once you hit tier 2. The character stand and all friendly regiments within 8 inches always count as being inspired, so basically it's a little bubble of tier 3 early, I guess.
Yeah.
Eternal Discipline is good if you're taking Varangian or Praetorians, because rerolling 6s kind of helps them stick around longer. Some people like Gladiator on him. I think that's a little bit redundant because he already has Flurry. Although that does give him Deadly Blades. I'm just not sure it's worth 25 points to really get Parry and Deadly Blades on him when he already has Flurry innately.
Yeah, I think locally I've seen a lot of Kiliarchs with Gladiator, and I'm just like, okay, there's some stuff on here, but like the doubling up on abilities is just probably not worth it.
I'd say if anything, like put something like Calamitas on him and then Overkill. So if you can try to duel something, each wound you cause the enemy character in the duel is taken as a morale. For each wound this character stand causes during a duel action, the regiment the enemy stand or character stand is attached to takes a morale test as if it had been allocated a wound.
Yeah.
So that's not bad because you're putting up -1 due to terrifying, and he's probably hitting like 7 times with cleave 2 if you bring Calamitas. So like and Flurry set, you're probably doing a pretty decent job of spilling over some extra damage into them after they're already probably losing their character. Semyon of the Legion's not bad. That's kind of a cheap banner if you don't want to pay the 30 points for Eternal Discipline or if someone else has taken it. You can take the banner for 20 points. He can take 2 treasures because he's cool like that.
He is the Kiliarch. When you have a name like that, you better be doing some cool shit.
If you want to, it's very expensive, but if you want to, there's an option where you can spend 40 points for a banner, the Sanctified Labaron, that lets you take a restricted option and count it as mainstay instead. So if you don't feel like paying for Legionnaires or Praetorians, you can just take Varangians. That's an option. Maybe not the best, but it's there. Curious of Heslia's Shadow's a little bit weird in that it's kind of expensive. It gives you +1 evasion, so you'd basically be putting them at evasion 2, which isn't terrible, but it's a little pricey for what it does. Adamantine Armor gives Tenacious. That's better on a different character that we're going to get to next. I guess that's kind of the general run-of-the-mill for the Kiliarch.
Yeah, so should we go to the Lion King, as I like to call him?
The Stratios.
Or, well, actually, he kind of has a little more Disney's Hercules look going on.
See, usually I just hear people say, oh, that fucking thing.
So here's the funny thing. Before the update in January, I put the Strategos as probably the weakest character in Old Dominion. And after the update, he is either your strongest or second strongest character because of what he is doing.
Probably strongest, just in terms of he's basically reshaped the army. I'm gonna be really sad when that inevitably gets toned down because it has to be. But
yeah,
it's been good after like a year and a half of just eating shit with Old Dominion. It's nice to get a little pick me up.
Yeah. This buff or whatever, it was very much like. Yeah, they needed the emotional support. Like all the Old Dominion players really needed that, and now it's like, okay, we get it. There's still like you can still win into Old Dominion, but it's like way because
harder. Old Dominion has always kind of been like a miserable time for newer players that don't know how to play into them. But then at the competitive level, Old Dominion was just like, oh cool, my opponents brought Old Dominion. I get a free game this round. Just milk them for points.
Money. I'll tell you for world's points.
Um,
Someone made a meme of me like that where it's like, I'll teach newer players for world's points. now I'm just going for it.
Interesting. I guess they're into it. So Stratios, he is the cheapest. Is he? No, I think he is the
He's
cheapest character now.
85. Yeah.
He's cheaper than the fucking Higher Deacon. So he probably has. I'd say his. So I always flip flop. I still think that the Archimandrite has the better supremacy by just a hair, like just a fraction of a hair, because 2 casts per round with his spell list is pretty decent.
Mm-hmm.
Stratios is really kind of like he can let you get to tier 4, which is okay. It's more of an endgame kind of flex kind of thing. But
yeah,
the big thing is his supremacy is once per game, everything in your army gets a free reform or combat reform action, and it counts the dark power pool as being 1 tier higher. So if you're tier 1, you can jump to tier 2 for a turn. If you're tier 2, you can quickly pop to tier 3 and get always inspired as well. It's really good, but it's kind of one of those. It's just slightly less good than the Archimandrite in my mind.
well,
Again,
the Archimandrite is just consistency, and that's kind of like
it's 9 turns of consistent benefit, whereas this one it's very, 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 very powerful, but there is still that little element of skill of like, okay, you have to time it right, because if you blow it too early or a turn too late, you're not gonna get anywhere near as much value out of it. Like I've seen people be like, well, I'm nervous, and sometimes I have been this person, but basically, you pop the supremacy a turn too early. Your fluid reform, not fluid, but your reform or combat reforms don't really amount to that much, and you don't gain as much benefit from the tier up as you could have if you had spiked it at a more opportune time. And it's kind of like, oh, well, that kind of came and went.
Mm-hmm.
As opposed to, cool, I get to heal and nuke, I get to buff and heal, I get to Aura of Death and heal, I get to etc. etc. And that's 9 turns that you get to do that. That's still an extremely good one, probably the second best one, just because again or first or second best one in the army, because again it affects everything in your army. Super good. Mainstay Athenati. Legionaries. Yep, that's pretty good.
I'm sorry. Whenever I see those things, I'm just like, please stop. Please don't do this. I have a family.
Centaur Prodromi, which are again a very nice mainstay option if you're going to be coming out end of this month.
Mm-hmm. We could probably save Cataphractoid for the mounted Strategos because he's going to actually do stuff for them.
Yeah, I guess that's the better pick for taking him with them. Praetorian Guard, yes, early and often. This is where you want to take your Praetorian Guard. You pay the mainstay tax for either Legionnaires or Prodromi, that's great. Praetorian Guard, thanks to his From the Front ability, they are mediums. He can bring them on the table as though they were lights for the purpose of the reinforcement roll.
Mm-hmm.
So you can have a big block of 5 or 6. He can take 2 treasures, so the current obnoxious loadout. He takes the Legio Primigenia banner to give them Aura of Death +2. That includes his stand as well. He takes Adamantine Armor to give them and himself Tenacious. And he takes the Mastery Eternal Discipline to give Untouchable, so reroll defense rolls of 6. He pops it on the table turn 1, so they march 11 inches with their banner on the first turn. Turn 2, they're on almost all objectives. And that's their home for most of the game. Super obnoxious.
Yeah, and remind me, just what was their Aura of Death number at with all the bonuses? Like, what's
so with the banner and with their officer upgrade for the Profane Reliquary, they are sitting at a meaty Aura of Death 4. So if you have you could easily get up to like 16 or 20 Aura of Death when you engage them.
And another real quick question: how many of the stands of these things are you taking in one regiment with the Strategos?
I used to take 5, now I take 6.
Oh, okay. And how wide are they going?
As wide as I can fit on the table, baby.
As wide as you'll let me.
As wide as I can fit on the table.
Oh my god.
Usually, I wouldn't go less than 4 wide. I try to go for 5. Although there have been a few where I've done, I think, 6 wide and just have 2 in the back. But so it's dumb. It's mean. You can start healing it pretty quickly with the Archimandrite. You won't actually be able to bring back stands until you're at tier 2, when he is able to heal for 3.
Mm-hmm.
And that's only if they're unharmed, but... Well, that's only if the remaining stand is unharmed, but, you can heal them.
Being defense 5 with Tenacious, yeah.
Well, you're spending most of the game probably defense 4, and again, that also relies on you going first and activating them and getting the draw event off, but still, I mean, it's no resolve, 5 wounds per stand, defense 2 plus shield, ability to bash into 4 or 5. It's just really fucking hard to chew through.
Yeah.
If you flank it with, like, if you're protecting one of the flanks with Impassable and you have carries on the other side, or if you have Caryatids behind them shooting over them, you have a nightmarishly hard bunker to chew through for most things, unless they have Line Breaker and, like, crazy high cleave or something, but it's really tough to chew through. It's almost, not fully, but it's pretty resilient to shooting. It's pretty resilient to a lot of things. It's sticking around for most of the game, and if you're an asshole like someone that might be on this call,
hey, wasn't me.
You might park something behind, like bone golems, and then if something does manage to chew through, their reward is to get bone golems in the face and start the AOD all over again.
Yeah.
Remember, kids, Mr. Bone's wild ride never ends.
No, it really doesn't. It just keeps going, keeps being mean.
So that's them. And then Cataphracti, I guess. Well, that's right. We're gonna. I mean, I already went over like his kind of big combo of Aventine, Banner, and Eternal Discipline. But
I'm kind of fine with him. Do you want to Mounted Strategos?
Sure. Mounted Stratios. It's a Stratios on a horse. The horse is also dead. He has 2 impacts. He has Brutal Impact 2. He's defense 3 and has a shield. He has 6 attacks and 6 wounds, as opposed to 5 and 4, or 5 and 5 like the other one.
Yeah, that horse gives him more offense and defense.
His star unit are the Cataphracti. They are basically shock cavalry. I think technically they're supposed to be shock cavalry, but I don't know if that's the purpose they really fill in the game. But basically, they're cavalry that roves around and just Kool-Aid mans through things. Some good upgrades for him would be Scrofnum, which gives him cleave +1 on his attacks, and then also Line Breaker for the entire unit, which is very important because Cataphracti's whole thing is they're only Clash 2. They are March 7. They have 5 attacks apiece, so their Clash doesn't really get them too far, but there is a fun setup you can do in that you put a banner on them, you take the officer potentially, the Hitaros, or companion, for 20 points. He gives them a really fucking stupid rule. I guess I do the lead up first. Sorry, I'm all over the place because I'm so excited.
That's okay.
They are so they're March 5, Clash 2, 5 attacks each, 4 wounds, defense 3 with shield, to get up to 4 from the front, evasion 1. They are Impact 3, Brutal Impact 2. Their Memory of Old gives them +1 impact hit and shock. So once they need to get to tier 2, do not engage them, or do not engage with them until they are at tier 2, or you're going to have a real terrible time. Because it turns out that hitting on 3s at Impact 4 and Brutal Impact 2 with Line Breaker from the Mounted Stratios, really good. And that stupid Hitaros that you paid those 20 points for gives them a special rule unique to the Old Dominion at this time called Overrun. If you break or destroy the enemy, or if you break the enemy regiment with your impact attacks, after morale tests, and remember, they're terrifying, you get to make all your impact attacks again. And if you shatter or destroy the regiment with that second round of impact attacks, the other thing is that the Hitaros allows you to charge more than once per round. So if you clear your target with all the impact attacks, you get to charge into a new target, make your impact attacks. If you break them, you get to make your impact attacks again. So you could potentially do 4 sets of impact attacks into 2 different targets, and just every turn, just as long as you pick your targets correctly and don't get countercharged, you can just Kool-Aid man your way through the opponent's army, and it's a real problem. That said, the way to stop them and stop their reign of terror, since they can't inspire in combat, if you charge them, the clock strikes midnight, they turn back into a pumpkin, and their weapons are transmuted into pool noodles at Clash 2 and not being able to inspire. Those 5 attacks aren't going to serve them terribly well, and they're probably just going to sit there and not earn their points back, and you're going to feel real sad.
Aren't they? They're Clash 2 base, right?
Yep, Clash 2 base. So
yeah, Clash 2 base. Hopefully, not being able to inspire because they haven't been fed enough with dark power, and So they're a very good Death Star unit. Except if they ever get bogged down, they die just like every other horse regiment.
Well, they're still fairly tanky at defense 3 with the shield from the front.
Yeah, they got Household Knights.
So they'll kind of stick around a little bit, especially since they don't take resolve. But at the same time, it's just they're not earning their points back.
No,
they're not the most expensive, but they're not super cheap. So you really don't want that as an Old Dominion player. But if you're playing into them, just have some Chumpo thing, if necessary. Maybe like March charge it, just to tie them up and fuck up their day. Attack from the flank to get past the shield, preferably with Cleaver AP, so that you can plink them down. They're only 4 wounds to a stand, so they're not super durable in that regard. They can't take a ton of hits. I've seen a lot of people run crazy huge death blocks where they're like 8 stands plus a character. Looks very scary, but again, that's a huge number of points in a single regiment, plus the character and his upgrades, and if you get charged, they're just going to sit there and not kill things.
Yeah, they're I like Death Star regiments, but I also hate Death Star regiments, and that's kind of like the reason for it, is that they tend to just if they ever get bogged down, or if you don't print your money out of them, you're not going to have a good time.
Yeah, I would say probably it's probably safer if you're very comfortable with positioning and flanking. Maybe take an MSU. Maybe leave the Hataros off even. Just use them just to smash into things with Brutal Impact 2. Otherwise, maybe put the Mountain Stratios in with them to give them a little bit of support with things like Skofnung for line breaker, things like that, and then maybe do like MSU plus character, or like character plus like 4 stands. Like, I wouldn't go too big on it, just so you're not putting all your eggs in one basket that can just be countercharged and then just sits there all game wishing they could play. That's kind of, I guess, the long and short with them. Which I guess leaves the Fallen Divinity, which has been a long time coming.
Yeah, let's talk about the Queen.
Weird ass model. I know that as a new player, you're probably thinking that's a sick model. I love it. It's a giant screaming undead, one-winged angel, bird, god, harpy thing with snarling dogs and the horrible rotting chest void. Something. It's fucked up. It's great. Sick model.
Okay, Sephiroth, calm down.
Really drew me to the faction. It's got a spear, not a sword. Don't worry about it. It's also not a great introduction to the army if you're new, because it basically turns a lot of the core army game plan on its head, because rather than your entire army benefiting as it dies, almost everything goes to her, and she just gets better and better. And also, she does buff your stuff, but she also potentially microwaves your stuff as well, and helps you kill your own things. Like a runaway meltdown of the army list. So
let's start with her on the aspect of how does she interact with Dark Power Pool? What's different than the regular Dark Power Pool? Because that's like the first big thing every player has to deal with when they use one in their army.
Yep. So basically, you can still put points into the Dark Power pool, but she scales off of the Fallen Pantheon pool, which is unique to her. Some people have said that you can split the pools and kind of get to tier 2 in both, but I don't think that's the safest option. Maybe if you have like a double Higher Deacon list supporting her, that might be possible, but I would not jump to that, especially if you're new. But basically, she scales off her own pool. It does not share tokens with the Dark Power pool, so whatever goes to her, and if she dies, they don't go back into the wild and go into your Dark Power pool, they're just gone. So a bit of a risk in that, and then also, like, because she doesn't really do much to empower the army, you won't be benefiting from your Memory Mold as a draw event, for example. So generally things that you want to run with her are going to be fairly self-sufficient, and that don't really need to rely on Dark Power to benefit. Like, you probably don't want to run Cataphracti with her, just because they are desperately looking for that draw event to get off the extra impact and the shock. If you have to burn an action for that, that significantly cuts into your threat range and into your damage output as a result. Probably not the best choice. So that's kind of the big difference between the two. What you do get in return is that each tier she goes up. She gets a much better stat block, and her list of special rules just continues to grow and bloat uncontrollably.
Yeah.
Her supremacy ability is basically she gets to exist, deal with it.
Great name.
And, oh yeah, a nice Vader reference in there. And then the other thing is that she does give a few benefits at tier 2.
Okay, so here, I have one question before we get into her stuff. The Dark Power Pool interaction with her, is there a range in how that Dark Pantheon pool interacts, or is it just like anywhere on the table, or is it
yes,
kind of like it's basically just like take the Dark Power Pool you would be already generating and put it towards her, or put it towards your pick?
So normally you can allocate to either pool. Mm-hmm. One of her starting special rules that she retains throughout the entire game is Fount of Dark Power. Any stands from a friendly regiment that die within 10 inches of her, the regiment, not the stand, has to be allocated to her. She just siphons it up. She says, "This is mine now. Get your own." So if your stuff's really close to her, which it'll, in a sense, want to be, which we'll get into in a bit, basically you have to give her the token. If you're doing the Higher Deacon and she's generating tokens from spells, I think you're just free to allocate to either pool. That bypasses it. When she hits tier 2, it goes from 10 inches up to 14 and stays there for 14 for both tiers 2 and 3. So it kind of just grows a little bit and becomes harder to not allocate to her pool over time. Another side benefit is that tier 2, so basically every time she tiers up, she gets a better stat block and more special rules. At tier 2, that range that she has to get tokens from things dying grows from 10 up to 14. Also, your friendly undead regiments, only undead, unfortunately the assassins are still left out in the cold.
Sucks to be them.
If you start your activation with an Inanimate Vessel regiment within 10 inches of her, they get +1 to their attack characteristic, so +1 attack per stand, which is pretty good. Especially on things like Canaphores, which are a mainstay for her. At tier 3, Animate Vessel rule regiments starting within 10 get +2 to their attack's characteristic and are dauntless, so they cannot be broken and they're always inspired. On the downside, when another friendly regiment completes its activation within 10 inches of her, and that's living or dead, assassins catching yet more strays, that regiment immediately suffers 4 wounds, no saves. You just take 4 wounds. She's burning a little too hot, and you kind of just get cooked by being in the presence of a god.
Yeah, there's a reason why we keep the gods locked away in heaven. Or they fear what they've created down on Earth.
So you kind of want to toe that line of getting that benefit, but also like getting the hell away from her, so that you're not just feeding your opponent free stands every turn. So there's kind of a little bit of positioning to be played with in there. She's weird, so she has flank, so she can come on. Turn, 1, 2, or 3. You could choose to hold her back or bring her out. Sometimes it's good to hold her back because she starts pretty weak defensively.
I have a question about the flank. Does she still gain tokens in the pool when she's not on the table?
Yes, Blasphemous Soma has been changed, so just every turn you get a token.
Yeah, and then and she can. So you gain that token and just throw it towards her pool and be fine.
Yep.
And as things die and she's not on the table, you just throw it towards her pool and be fine.
Yep, and then you also have the higher deacon kind of accelerating things just to help get her from a vulnerable state, because she starts pretty unimpressive. She is a heavy, but she can come in as though she were a light regiment.
Okay.
Also, you can only have one fallen divinity, and she has to be a ward if you take her. She doesn't take kindly to other lame asses trying to say that they're in charge instead of her. And she's certainly not going to put up with other gods.
Do people really have a choice?
And then she can only have 2 regiments in her warband, but she can take the Bucephali, the Centaur Cherokees, Caryatids, or Canophores. So all the statues, the bow centaurs, and the Bucephali can only take 2 regiments, though. She can take up to 3 masteries. So a very common loadout is giving her Dread through Aura of Malice. So basically, can't inspire against her, and also all friendly regiments within 8 inches of her also get that. Giving her Untouchable for reroll 6s, which stacks very nicely with her Blessed. And then, kind of as a filler, I've sometimes seen people take a third, like Implacable, where I think it's as a character action, she can give herself Linebreaker. So that way, if someone's like really stacking Bastion and or Shields, you can kind of use that so that her high cleave towards endgame can kind of go directly towards trying to wound them. But that's kind of that. Let's see. Where's the thing? I thought that there was something about her. Is it in her supremacy ability? The joys of all this stuff kind of being spread around. Let's see. She is a regiment and a character, so she gets 2 actions. She is a monster stand.
So she could charge into something and then like duel out your character, but she probably just wants to clash the regiment, right? Because she only gets 2 actions.
Only the 2 actions, no free dual action, and considering how good how crazy at tier 3 her impacts of clash is, it's probably better just to do that to wipe out the unit. Also, if she's really close to dying, you could potentially duel her because she cannot refuse a duel. She's too good for that.
Yeah, or use it to get that damage in to try and kill her.
Yeah. Where's the... so she is a heavy, so she can do up to 2 wounds per action to a marker, but she counts as light for the purposes of coming in from reinforcements, so you can get her in turn 1, 2, 3. It's kind of hard to go over her stat line because she has 3 of them, 1 for each tier.
Okay, so let's because like tier 1, she's got 12 wounds, and she's defense 2 and evasion 3, and then she has a bunch of rules, and then she's tier 2.
Clash 2 8 attacks. She's blessed, cleave 1, 4 impacts, hardened 1. Tier 2. So when she tiers up, she also, in addition to getting the new profile, she also heals. So going into tier 2, she will heal 4 wounds after she gets her new profile. So basically, the wounds don't just go into nothing. And then at tier 3, she gets the new tier stat line for tier 3, and then heals 6. So if you think that she's real close to tearing up and she's close to dying, you can try to kill her, but just be aware that if you fail, she's going to heal a bunch of wounds, be stronger for it, and you're probably just going to not be happy about it.
Not have a good time. Yeah, that's So what is? So let's talk about her warband. Then we'll talk about how to kind of defeat her. Because like, whenever I look at her warband, she's got Bucephaloi, Centaur Curie Keys, Canifers, and Curatids, and she can only take 2 regiments in her warband. I see a lot of people just grabbing Canifers because they're self-sufficient.
Yep.
And that's kind of it. Would you grab anything else in there, or would you just take the 2 units of Canifers?
Apparently, I would just take 2 units of Canifers. I prefer having 2 blocks of 5, just because it's really tanky, it's really beefy, it's pretty quick, and a fun thing that I like to do is have them kind of screen her. So basically, people are trying to chew through this nightmarishly hard to remove blessed Canifor block. It's in range of her buff, so they're going up from 5 attacks up to 6. And if they do manage to chew through it, their reward is that she's probably just close to hitting tier 3. And if they kill the 5 Canifors, that's 5 more tokens to the pool. So odds are good that they'll be instantly rewarded with her just coming screaming through the rubble and just pulling them apart.
Yeah, I tend to see with Fallen Divinity lists, it's like her and her 2 Canifors, and they're hanging out on one side of the table while the rest of the army is hanging out on the other, and the rest of the army is just kind of like, we're going to sit in these zones and just kind of hold off and sacrifice tokens at an appropriate rate. And then her and her Canifers are just doing all the heavy lifting and taking over an entire side and collapsing a flank.
Well, I was going to say I definitely run kind of more central with the list, and then as things develop, kind of have her peel off towards a side that, like, pick a side that, like, your other stuff can hopefully retain control of, and that's not too well defended, and then whatever is, like, more of a bunker and or dangerous, like, you can then throw her into the Canifors and that, and just kind of have them go, cause trouble over there, because they're much more likely to survive than your 3 Legionnaires with your Higher Deacon in it.
Yeah.
But yeah, at tier 3, don't fight her at tier 3. She is March 8, Clash 4, 12 attacks at Cleave 3, 16 wounds, Defense 4, Hardened 2, Evasion 1, Blessed. She has Terrifying 3. She has Tenacious. She rerolls charge rolls. She has 5 impact attacks at Brutal Impact 3. I forget if I mentioned that, but she's Cleave 3 on her 12 attacks. So yeah, just
don't do it.
Don't do it. Yeah. Also, another quick note: it is spelled out in the rules for her tier list, but no, she does not benefit from her tier 2 or tier 3 auras. She will not take wounds at tier 3 from her own aura. She does not get extra attacks. That is not a thing. Do not give yourself free hits on the Fallen Divinity.
Don't hurt yourself. Yeah.
Well, no. Like she doesn't go from like, oh, I get 12 attacks, but I get +2 from her aura because she's in range of herself. Okay. No, it's other regiments. She does not benefit from her own +1 or +2 aura. No free attacks for her.
Okay, good. Gotta rein her in a bit.
Yep. But yeah, basically just don't fuck with her at tier 3. Try to kill as much of the rest of the army as you can, so that she's basically like stuck on babysitting duty, just trying to hold a point and like score. That's probably the best thing I can recommend. I think she's mathematically weakest at tier 3, tier 2.
Yeah, because she's just like a glorified mountain giant at that point.
Because she's defense 3, evasion 2, hardened is still 2, so that's your cleave's not going to help that much. But again, defense 3 and 14 wounds. Plus, if you did enough damage at tier 1 with like ranged and magic are pretty good because she can't block that. So if you can whittle her down a bit so that when she heals 4 going into tier 2, if you did enough when she was tier 1, like you might be able to still have enough damage on her to make a tier 2 assassination possible, at which point they've lost a ton of points and they've lost like a huge anvil and hammer at the same time. So
Yeah.
that'd be pretty cool. But don't overextend your forces trying to kill her. Like, if you think you can do so relatively safely, go for it. Like, plink her down with range, plink her down with magic, but don't go out of your way, because if you don't roll well or if you calculate poorly, you'll probably just lose whatever you're sending into her.
Yeah, she does not like Merc crossbows, what I have learned. Like, 2 or 3 regiments of Merc crossbows just harassing her the entire time as she's trying to move at the table. She does not like, even if she's stealing stuff.
It's free damage.
Yeah, prints money, Merc crossbows.
Yeah, I guess that's about all I have to say for off the top of my head.
What else was I? What are her... We've kind of talked about, like, her whole profile and everything. What does she want to fight into and what she doesn't want to fight into? Like, what's things, like, other players can do to deal with her? Like, we kind of mentioned a couple of them, like, shooting her is really good, and then, like, watching out for her transition. But is there any regiments in the game or anything like that what you just don't want to deal with, even when she's at tier 3?
So funnily enough, I think that if you have a big block of something like carries, like normally they're just okay into the OD mirror match, because insanity doesn't work because you can't hurt their lack of resolve. Their range isn't great, but considering their evasion 2 and they don't take resolve, that basically means that her cleave 3, terrifying 3 doesn't mean shit. So if you get them into her, they can be a fairly decent roadblock to buy you a turn or two as she tries to chew through them, and then in the event that you have some like good defense rolls, or if she has like shitty hit rolls, you could potentially just like heal a stand back and then just keep the sick farce going for another turn.
Mm-hmm.
So that could potentially be a roadblock. Basically, she probably doesn't like things that are she doesn't like things that are fearless, because losing terrifying 3 at tier 3 really sucks.
That's where all damage is coming from.
Yep, things that are really high damage and or high hardened. She doesn't like losing out on her impact. She doesn't like losing out on her cleave. So if there's a big block there with Armor of Dominion in it for 100 Kingdoms, don't touch the character stand. That's a real terrible idea, and especially if it's in like Gilded Legion, where they're going to shut off your your inspiration bonus, so you don't reroll 6s, and you lose your impact attacks, and you lose cleave and brutal impact. That's a bad one. Don't do it. So yeah, just watch out for things that are fearless, things that can screw with your cleave or your impact attacks, things like that, because potentially also things that are like really big tar pits, stay away from. Like, you'd think that she'd probably be okay into the force grown drone block, but because they basically, even when broken, can still benefit from like purposefully mindless, and they can regen a lot, and they just have a bunch of wounds. She only has 12 attacks. She's only really just like a regiment at that point. So if she misses some attacks, that's really not that scary. You can kind of use that to your advantage and like just kind of tar pit her a little bit, just knowing that she can only kill something so fast. Especially again if they're really high resolve or if they're fearless. So I guess you could try using that to your advantage, and keep in mind that she can only bless once per round and only melee attacks. So if you really have to get into it with her, just try to whittle her down with a bunch of different stuff, and as long as it's not in melee, you're probably gonna do it half decent.
Yeah, okay.
Still, don't expect her to die, because tier 3, if you haven't been keeping her low on wounds and making her kind of play more conservatively, like 16 wounds at defense 4 with blessed and hardened 2, like, and tenacious, just don't do it. And even more so if she's turning off inspiration and if she's rerolling 6s on defense, just you're gonna regret trying. Just don't.
Oh hell. Okay. I'm getting my ass kicked by a Death Knight. It's being very rude. Okay, well that's good to know about her. I'm glad we talked about her. Do you want to talk about some matchups? Like what you kind of want to see or what you want to do into specific factions, and then we'll wrap it up?
Sure.
Okay, so let's kind of start with the top, like 100k. What are things you want to do as an Old Dominion player into 100k, and what are things you want to be aware of in 100k?
100 Kingdoms, well, I guess to start off with being aware of, so I just kind of mentioned it. Armor of Dominion. We've got a lot of things that have pretty good cleave. Armor of Dominion just says, yeah, fuck your cleave. That's a sad time. Don't do that. Watch out for things like obviously Ashen Dawn. Watch out for Crimson Tower. Just things that can get a lot of hits in, and probably chew through your armor. Again, defense 3 only gets you so far, so going below that's kind of a quick way to eat shit. They also have pretty good range, as Matt said earlier. Crossbowmen are real dirt cheap in 100 Kingdoms. They got 18-inch range and AP1. A few turns of shooting from them can really plunk you down. Old Dominion does not like walking into ranged. If you have access to Aura of Death and you see some lighter things, like if they're, say, defense 1, 2, or 3, sometimes you can, if you don't think you're going to get countercharged too badly, you could occasionally set up like maybe a March charge just to tie something up and hopefully or death bomb it. Usually it's best to try to avoid that just because it'll probably be punished and you don't want to just throw your stuff away in a bad trade, but it's possibly an option. In general, just kind of stick with the plan of kind of running, a fairly focused, blocking about like 2/3 of the table and just kind of push forward and just have enough stuff coming at them that they can't quite fight you off effectively. I guess just really watch out for Ashen Dawn. They just suck no matter what.
Ashen Dawn, bane of everybody. Okay, sweet. Spires? Things you want to see, things you want to do, things you don't want to see, things you don't want to do.
I don't want to see Spires.
Oh, okay. Is it because of Carl?
It's 100% Carl. Like,
we're all getting Carl PTSD.
Like, the things that man does with marksman clones and a biomancer, and the incarnate brick with AOD4 and an extra clash, like, holy shit, he just dismantles my entire army, because marksman clones with arcing fire and deadly shots, 22 inches of range, that is Old Dominion's nightmare scenario. Plus something that also can bring AOD4 to the table. It sucks having to taste my own medicine. They generally have better healing than we do, I think, just in terms of if they're running Underspires, maybe not if they're running other lists, but a lot of their stuff can be a little bit faster than ours, so they can stay outside of our threat ranges and then kind of still get in and do stuff. I think the new Leonine are going to be really obnoxious to deal with just because Fortune inch range AP2, deadly shots on volley 3 and 8 with brutes. That's going to be pretty rough. I guess the upside being that if we do touch a lot of their stuff, it's not super defensive. So
no, they have a lot of their stuff isn't very durable.
Yeah, I guess just kind of watch out for things like the Force Grown Drone Hell Blob, because the Resolve's they're not gonna take Resolve. What am I talking about? And just there's so many of them that you have to be careful of how you engage with it and try to get rid of it, just because if you don't, they're just gonna come back and poke you to death, and it'll be dumb and sad and bad. Also, watch out for those Sentinels, because they fucking scoot. They're cleave 2. They hit pretty well, and they have decent. I think they're impact 3, and Ferromantic Override, they can clash again, and then whatever's left of you will get AOD forward when you try to activate it. So just watch out for that. For Dwegum, this is another slightly rough matchup, just in that Dweg like their guns, and Old Dominion does not like guns.
Yeah.
They also tend to have more access to cleave, which kind of takes away from our things with higher cleave. They have a lot of access to hardened or ability to pass it out through the steel shaper, which again screws with our hardened. Some things with pretty good defense values, which Aura of Death sometimes can't quite get around. Sometimes it can, like Warriors and Ballistae, whatever. Flame Berserkers, whatever. Initiates, that's more of a problem. Things like that. Also, that fucking Steel Shaper Supremacy makes me want to pull my hair out, because taking a few wounds, for basically blocking a couple of wounds with tokens from the Aura of Death, or anything really. You block a few wounds, and then whatever spills through, if it's not Aura of Death, cool, I will pass the morale checks, and I'm also going to heal back, so basically I can potentially bring back a stand if you did a wound to me. It's like, oh wait,
Yeah.
Or however the math works. It's been a while since I've played Dweg, admittedly, but that's one you have to watch out for. Just again, make sure that you do not feed your stuff one regiment at a time into their gun line. You will lose probably. If you have multiple threats, they can only shoot so many at once as you close in, at which point you can start picking apart things, charging into their ranged units, shutting off their shooting, and just kind of start grinding them down. So just make sure to properly develop your table before charging in, or you're just going to get picked up. Nords, that's another rough one, just because there's a lot of shooting in Nords. There's a lot of good shooting in Nords, especially those damn Bosun.
But Bow Chosen are bad. They're not good into the Old Dominion matchup.
No comment.
You won't fall for my tricks.
Feather are nutty. Those things will just Tokyo drift over the whole damn table, go wherever they please, wind up in your flank. Probably reroll all their hits from opportunists if the Vargulord's the one taking them. They slap.
Doesn't the Jarl Warlord also give them opportunist?
I believe so. Yes. Great.
You're like, Norse PTSD kicking in hard.
Yeah. Again, Bow Chosen are really good at doing damage to. They bully the shit out of bone golems. If you get a lot of ones, they could probably take out a stand or so of the Praetorians. If you can get Bosun to go first before Praetorians can get all their Bastion buffs stacked on top of them, and you can get them from the flank, so you're rerolling everything, you can easily just whittle them down. That's real good. Also, you've got early scoring, early pressure. You probably won't win a grind down with them, but you can whittle them with a hailstorm of ranged shots and just get early scoring going, and ideally just have enough MSUs kind of coming at them to keep them pushed off objectives to the point where they just can't make a comeback. Also, you ignore hindering terrain and water and get extra charge distance when things are engaged with them. So,
yeah,
that's a rough one for OD to deal with. If you're having trouble with them, just kind of hang in there. Just kind of try to focus, big threats down. Try to use range to your advantage. Try to get into the flanks, even though you might think that doesn't do a lot. It's still helpful to keep them pinned and reduce their combat efficiency. Into a Droon. Boy, I fucking hate slingers.
But the Old Dominion don't take resolve damage. They're bad into Old Dominion.
I hate slingers so much, it's unreal. Volley 3, 18 inches. I think the Barrage 4 stand.
Okay.
Like, if you let them, they could easily pick up an MSU around. Of most things, maybe not Old Dominion because we don't take the resolve from them, that, but still, just they can reach out and touch you. Hunters are very scary into bone golems, it turns out, because if you take that little upgrade that lets them ignore hardened,
Yeah.
basically, cool. If they ignore hardened, your bone golems are now saving on 2s instead of 3s, and they're deadly shots, and they have fiend hunter, so they get to reroll the things against your bone golems.
Are you telling me that the hunters are hunting?
Yeah, and it turns out the undead are on the menu. It's like one of the few things that I'm actually really scared to see hunters with is my bone golem list. So just the early game pressure that Wadroon can put out can be pretty rough. Although that is mercifully helped by the fact that generally a lot of their stuff is so low on defense that if you can get something with AOD into them, they're probably going to melt. One thing to watch out for, a sneaky little interaction. I think that Chance and AOD both occur before draw events, but they occur simultaneously. And I think that the acting player gets to choose the order, so I believe the Wadroon player
Can choose to chant or not chant.
Oh yeah, so they'll probably choose to chant beforehand, and if they're chanting war, they can unbreak and give themselves +1 defense, possibly +1 resolve, and kind of shrug off some of the worst of AOD. So just be aware that that's a possibility. The Apex, really easy to kill, but it probably out-threats you on a lot of things, and if it gets into your brutes, it will eat them. If it gets into your the flank of your Praetorians, it will eat them. Try not to let it do that. The Town Tour, it's really just a check on how much you can dump into it.
Yeah, it's just an HP sponge, just a damage sponge.
Yeah, it's again, defense 3 is not super scary. Oblivious is a little bit annoying, but again, just hit it a bunch and it will fall down. It doesn't like Varangians. It doesn't like bone golems. Just shoot it or attack it or whatever. Or use carries and spike the roll and have them roll a bunch of 6s. They'll go away.
Oh my god! Actually, it's a great target. Is it Resolve 4 base? I want to say it's Resolve 4 base.
I want to say it's Resolve 3. I don't have it in front of me.
I know it's Oblivious, but like, yeah, if you get a bunch of Curious Insanity the shit out of it, it'd be really funny. It's like, oh, you failed 5 6s. Guess you take 4 damage each. Oh, there's 20 wounds. It's like, oh, Jesus.
But yeah, I guess just watch out for how fast they can be. Watch out for how defensive war can make certain things, or how it can make them deceptively defensive. Volume of attacks, and just access to some pretty decent ranged stuff. But in a longer battle, you probably come out ahead just because you're a little more defensive on average, and with AOD, you can really kind of throw your weight around and kind of bully them and kind of burn them down. I'll save the Old Dominion mirror match for later because that's its own unique layer of level of hell.
When the Old Dominion players have to play one another, it's like, oh boy.
City states, I think that so they got better with the chariots, that's for sure. But I think you can still bully them pretty effectively because like Illinois and Satyri are like defense and or evasion 2, not that great of resolve, so they're not that hard to kill. Hoplites, if you flank them, they fall apart. Don't charge them from the front. That's a bad idea for any faction. Just don't do it. Unless you're Varangian Guard, in which case they die. Because they ignore the shield, they ignore all their defense, and you have an extra point of cleave left over to ignore phalanx, so straight wounds on them. That's always fun. Minotaurs, if you can catch them off guard, they die. They're defense 2, evasion 1. Like, they fall apart. They break their ankle, and Dr. Mechanist has to take them out back and put both barrels between their eyes.
They're like, you want to be glue today? It's like, no, sir. Oh, sorry, you're glue.
Chariots, just kind of watch out. Those can be annoying just because of the fire in advance. Move up, shoot, back shuffle. Getting shot in the flank also sucks due to exposed flanks on the Scorpios chassis, and then just keep an eye out for that with Praetorians, because losing shields and AP1 into the flank and rerolling defense rolls of 1, that's not great. Watch out for Tharians. Like, again, if you touch them, you'll kill them, but if they touch you, you're losing something probably.
Yeah. Dice Thyrians, Doomblade.
Yep. Trying to think if there's anything else. Agama, they have crazy threat range. Just respect that. Try to know what their threat range is, and then factor in like the extra range they could squeak out using fluid formation reforms. Beyond that, I'm not too scared about city states in general. Like, other than hoplites, they're fairly low to mid defense and resolve. So
What about the Talos?
I haven't faced it yet. I haven't sat down and mapped out how I would deal with it. If I had to pick, I guess I'd say more carries. Honestly, I haven't really put that much thought into it. I know that it takes probably something like 40 hits into it to really kind of like put it down or something like that. I think is what the math came out to be. I guess if you can get golems or Varangians into the flank or something, and or some AOD mixed in, and you could probably grind it down, because I think it's really just kind of defensive. It's not very killy in its own right. So
yeah, it's got a good whack behind it, but it's not like it's going to be blowing up any regiments anytime soon.
Especially not when they're not
it's
taking
13 attacks at Cleave 1 on Clash 3. Like, it's not bad. It's just like, okay. It'll do work, but it's more of just a defensive stick.
Yeah, plus I guess it's kind of more likely to be used in a way where it just kind of defends like a point and just kind of that's its zone now, so it's probably not like roving around trying to get into scraps with you. So I guess you could whittle down other parts of the army preferentially instead, and then either deal with it or just cool, you get to score your 2 points on that zone back there, and I get to just spread out and do everything else. Sorcerer Kings, that's a weird one. With all the access to priests and carries and things like that, you can fuck with a lot of their spells, because it turns out that a faction relying on 12-inch range, attunement 3, 7 spell dice across the board, and no focused or no rerolls on their spells, for being called Sorcerer Kings, they fill an awful lot of spellcasts, I've found.
Yeah.
Because I also run them, and there have been games where I just don't cast the spell if it's not off of Conflagration. So their stuff's weird in that everything except ghouls, and I think Rajikor being universally defense 3, resolve 3 across the board. There's a lot of stuff that Old Dominion can absolutely boil the daylights out of between Cleave and Terrifying. But that potential for triple activation, and then they have very good ranged support from the Flamecaster Ifrit and the Donner Disciples. Just kind of respect that, and also the Bakasura Rakshasa will just eat your Archimandrite or Higher Deacon if you let it, so just make sure they're properly screened.
Would the character slaying monster, would that go for your Strategos or Ziliarch as well? Just like cut out the Strategos out of like a Praetorian block?
So you could try that. I don't know. I guess you could try, but the problem is that because, like, if you decline a duel, I think one of the penalties that I just learned about, because playing Old Dominion, you don't pay attention to these things sometimes, but I think you on a declined duel you reroll defense, or I'm sorry, you reroll morale rolls on one.
Yeah.
But if you're on the point and they can't get on it, or at least they can't outweigh you, like, why, yes, I will decline your duel so that I don't lose my Stratios. Why would I fight you? And then, okay, you're doing 15 attacks into me, hitting on, like, I don't know, threes or fours, rerolling sixes, or I guess rerolling everything from the decline duel, but, like, your cleave one, like, if I fail everything, I will take 14 wounds, which is not quite 3 stands of Praetorian Guard, so you can pretty safely probably just decline it and tank a lot of it, and then you clap back, and then the Rakshasa dies because it's like 16 wounds, defense 3, resolve 3.
Yeah,
So
that's fair. Like,
it's very risky. I'm not sure I'd want to put it in there. I'd much rather try to fish for if there was an open lane, I could get it into, like, maybe trying to get into the Archimandrite or Higher Deacon's regiment.
like if
Because
you thread a needle between some regiments and just like shoot your way over and then just kill the character, like kill the regiment even or the character.
either, like, you're probably killing the regiment anyway, because
Yeah,
between
but
the impacts, the Aura of Death, when they activate later, and the 15 attacks, even if you don't get the rerolls, I mean, you're still probably doing, like, 4s rerolling 6s on 15 attacks at cleave 1, so they're saving on 1s. Like, odds are pretty good that if if they're not broken, I mean, you could, yeah, they're getting fucked up. Like, you might not remove them, but they are not going to be operable after.
yeah. Well, if it's like a MSU of Legionnaires, like that monster's probably taking them. Well, no, because of resolve. Because of no
Again,
resolve keeps them alive
yeah,
longer.
no resolve. So, if that's kind of the other thing you have to think of when fighting Old Dominion is you can only ever deal as many wounds as you have attacks, and that's assuming you hit everything. So if you try to plan out more like mathematical averages, you can think, okay, if this thing averages like 9 wounds, I am only taking maximum of 9. I'm probably saving 1 or 2 of those on ones. I can probably expect to lose this. So you can kind of start to math out what might be um, a safe trade for you as Old Dominion, or if you're playing against them, you can kind of start to think, okay, I know if they can only take this many, I average this on an average dice roll, so and they save this many on average, so I should plan for them losing this many. Yeah, I'll take that trade, or like, I'm not going to send this in there because I'm only going to take a stand and a half, and then I get this thing taken out by whatever's off to the side or something. So you can kind of use that kind of for some quick decision making. It's not always, something you should live and die by, but it can just kind of help inform your planning. But yeah, I would probably not put the Rakshasa in there unless now if I had a bunch of stuff that like laid into them, the Praetorians that is, with one combo with Sorcerer Kings is Conflagration, have the Sorcerer cast a free Searing Sandstorm at something within 12 of her. That applies a -1 defense debuff. So if you can get the Rakshasa into the flank of the Praetorians with that up, especially if you can go first before they can get their jaw bent off for Bastion, that might be worth it just from setting up 15 attacks at cleave 1, plus -1 defense into the flank ignoring shield. So basically they're saving on 1s, rerolling 6s, dropping 1, and taking 5 brutal impact, and 5 Aura of Death. And then if they do kill it, if your wizard's within 8 inches, you can just kind of scoop up its essence and just cast dump it back into them for 8 free hits. So it's not a great trade, but it's definitely something to at least consider if you really need it. But again, watch out for flame casters. Watch out, keep your priests safe from the Rakshasa. Watch out for Donner. Watch out for the sword dancers, because 3 impact to stand, 6 clash attacks per stand. Base clash of 3, probably 4s rerolling 6s on the charge, including 3s rerolling 6s on the impacts. They can pump out a lot of hits, especially with Searing Sandstorm, so they can probably pick up an MSU, and with that triple activation, they can out-threat you as well, so just kind of respect the threat range. know that Searing Sandstorm's probably going to knock down your defense for something important each round, and just try to catch them off guard and just continue to whittle things down. Old Dominion.
All right, mirror match. Let's hear it.
Boy, I play far too many mirror matches. It usually happens once or twice a tournament.
How many did you have in Adepticon? I know you for sure had one.
I only had one that time.
Oh, okay.
That was against Chris, I think. That was great guy. We had almost the same list except for like a few cosmetic differences.
It's good. It's good that all the old Dominion players are on the same wavelength.
But so that's a weird one because basically you're hitting your power spikes at about the same time. Usually, not always. There was a very horrible match where I had it was fun. He's a good fun. One of our locals, Matt, also plays Old Dominion. We faced each other off in a local tournament, and basically he had managed to kill like a stand from each of my regiments. So I was ahead on tiers. It took him, I think, until like turn 6 to hit tier 2 finally. So he was hardly doing anything. He was just able to like whittle my stuff down. But by whittling my stuff down, I was just that less able to like retaliate. So it was just this horrible slog grind fest. But normally you're probably hitting your tier power spikes around the same time. Most of your stuff is Clash 2. You can't inspire unless you're the one charging. No one's taking resolve. Your defense values are the same.
Oh yeah,
So
what else? Keep
oh
going.
boy! You get to go first. You take the Order of Death. Okay, now I activate this thing. I take the Order of Death. Cool. We're both defense 3. What a shock! Oh, we're both taking the same amount of Order of Death. Your commander heals the thing. Cool. Mine does the same thing. Wow, this is incredible. Oh, and your hired deacons. Yeah, and then she does this. Yeah, and I get the token. Yeah, okay. This is great. It's like my own horrible twin.
This gets me into like 100k mirror matches. I have another local who plays 100k, and him and I played a bunch. He's like, "Why don't you ever want to play 100k to me?" And I'm like, "Man, nothing interesting is happening when we play a mirror match. It's just like our interesting part of the game is our lists, and then it kind of just plays out the way it plays out. And so I find that very similar with, I guess, coming from Old Dominion and coming from like Dwight Home, is that it's just like you just do the thing and you're all the same, like great. So besides that, it sucks that and everything's happening at the same time and nothing like exciting is happening between the two Old Dominion players. What are some pieces in the faction that actually do work into the faction? Like what are some things that are actually good into Old Dominion from Old Dominion?
So carries definitely take a hit because insanity doesn't work. I think they have a slight place in that -1 defense can help you win the AOD wars.
The AOD wars of 2012.
I mean, if you're both going to be defense 3 into AOD, then I'd rather be the guy with defense 3 than defense 2. They can also screw with cleave, so they just kind of become this annoying roadblock. Because it doesn't cause hits, the -1 defense spell can be cast even if you're engaged or something else. They're not a great pick, though, just because, again, they're not contributing a lot offensively. So Aura of Death stuff is pretty good just because there's so much defense 3 that Aura of Death can carry a lot of weight, and auto hitting with Aura of Death is great when you're normally swinging at Clash 2 and missing almost everything because you can't inspire. It also doesn't cause resolve, so you're not losing anything there from terrifying. Let's see. If you have some range, it's not bad. Actually, I'm going to take it back. Carries might be okay because that 12-inch range, you can aim and volley, you can drain will and volley, but that kind of gives you a little ranged edge that the opponent might not necessarily bring into a mirror match. Varangians are nice because they fuck bone golems. They fuck the Praetorian block to pieces. They, other than the Bucephali and the Caryatids and the Fallen Divinity, like they'll probably punch through most other heavy things because turns out that Cleave 3 and Linebreaker is really pretty good. Cataphracti are okay, but you really probably don't like the fact that they're not causing resolve because you really kind of rely on that for overrun if you bring the Hitaros. But sometimes the speed is useful and they're just kind of defensive, and I wouldn't really take them as my first option. I would say like Aura of Death, and so basically Bone Golems, the Praetorian block, and maybe some carries are probably like, oh, and Varangian Guard. Those are things that I would definitely think would kind of help with the mirror match a bit.
Okay.
Be carefully less so just because they're so pricey and they're so limited on attack number, or volume of attacks, I guess. Caryatids might not be too bad. Ganaphores are also pretty good just because they hit a lot, they're accurate, they're Clash 3 instead of Clash 2.
Oh,
And on ones, you can get flawless strikes and ignore their defense, which can help you kind of come out ahead a little bit, especially if you're not getting caught by. Just don't get them caught with Aura of Death. I had one person at an event charge Clash. No, I'm sorry. March charge Bone Golems with Canaphores. And it's kind of like, okay, you got me with your 2 impact attacks. You've now set up an AOD bomb for yourself next turn, so have fun with that. It didn't go well for them. It turns out that, again, defense 3 into like 20 Aura of Death with no rerolls is kind of shit. That's averaging something like 2 stands of Canaphores dead a turn.
Oh my god.
So just be careful about that. But I'm just kind of rambling at this point. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. Do you want to... So, okay, the last thing I have for you, by the way, thank you very much for, like, really breaking down Old Dominion. Like, we've actually been going on for quite a while, but it's... I don't know, it's good stuff. What are... I would like you to talk about your Mr. Bones Wild Wide list, because I think it's very good and something that everyone should know if you'd like to have it out for everybody so that they can steal from the internet and get to know how to play actually like a really good list where you make your opponent roll dice and you don't roll anything. And do you have a Fallen Divinity list?
I do, and I'm happy to share these because these were basically things that I workshopped with Ben and Carl on Discord.
Okay, so which one do you want to do first? Fallen Divinity or Mr. Bones?
Well, real quick, where is my Fallen Divinity? So I guess I will do Mr. Bones first, just because I'll have to remake. So the current iteration of Mr. Bones, this has been kind of tweaked over the last few months, but...
So what's the full title of this amazing list, by the way?
So normally I gave stupid names like, there was Mr. Bones Wild Ride, which I think I took to LVO. Then there was my favorite, which is Mr. Bones Wilder Ride, which I took to AdeptCon. Briefly, I had Mr. Bones Rides again, but I think I'm just going to change just to Mr. Bones Wilder Ride.
Okay.
I just enjoy that one. It's a stupid little cute name for it. So that has an Archimandrite with Consecrated Mitre for the extra dice.
Archimandrite Warlord?
I like the Warlord, but I want to try the Stratios, just because there might be some value in the getting the extra reforms on the Golems for extra charge range. But Archimandrite with Consecrated Mitre, so you get +1 spell die for each tier of the power pool. A 5 block of carries. So they're basically base Priest 5, and if you get your Memory of Old off as a draw event, they get Priest 10. And as they die, you can potentially double up. It caps at Priest 12, but that's still a lot of fucking carries.
Yeah.
An MSU of Legionnaires for the Archimandrite to hide out in, and then 2 bricks of 5 Bone Golems. Those are the big workhorses of the list. So that's 340 points. That is 30 wounds apiece. And that is potentially anywhere between 15 and 25 aura of death, depending on your tier and how early you can get them to pop off.
How much of a long boy you want to be? Long cat, but it's just bone golems. It's like,
well, that's the idea. That's the idea of trying the Stratios, because getting that free reform, you could charge reform, just spread out extra thick, and then get all your clashes in, and then also be like, by the way, my gift to you, Aura of Death 20.
That's what everyone wants to deal with. Today, I woke up and chose violence. Alright, did we talk about the Strategos and Praetorian block in this list, or...?
Not yet. I'm doing the boring stuff first. Higher Deacon, I didn't have 10 points. I had 10 points to play around with at the end, so I just slapped Eleutheria on her so that when I charge, if in the event that I have to have her Legionnaire MSU do something combat related, at least she's at the same clash value as them. She'll be 2, and also it gives them, it gives her rather a little bit of prickliness on a duel, so that maybe that'll discourage someone from dueling her.
Yeah, fair.
Just by giving her, cleave, counterattack, and parry on a duel. So, Stratios, the Warlord this time around, which is new for me. He has his usual loadout of Legio Primigenia for the +2 AOD for himself and the regiment, Aventine Armor for Tenacious on himself and the regiment, and Eternal Discipline for reroll 6s on himself and the regiment. He has a 6 block of Praetorian Guard, a whopping 30 wounds to chew through, Profane Reliquary to bring him up to a total of +4 Aura of Death, the Standard Bearer so that they can get their extra marching and secure charges if they want to charge clash or march charge something, just kind of throw their weight around and blow things up with Aura of Death. And then finally, to unlock them on the Stratios, a mainstay of MSD Legionnaires with their free Standard Bearer and a 15-point Optio to give them Vanguard. I can use that to kind of aggressively score points on a zone early. If I choose to not have them kind of stay central to like my 2/3 of the table strategy, I can kind of throw them out on a far zone and then hopefully either soak up free scoring or force my opponent to kind of divert some resources to that zone to kind of stop them, make them go away, and stop me from getting free points, which leaves the rest of my army with, 1 or 2 little things less to slow them down. Because it's because Legionnaires are so cheap, but kind of so durable with the lack of resolve. If you throw something that's about 100 points at them, and it's also an MSU, it'll probably take them 2 turns to get rid of them, and then with the Memory of Old, you can probably still potentially score zones. So it's one of those things where you have to commit to removing them, so the idea is kind of either let me score or divert your resources to stop that.
Okay.
And it's great fun. You
what's the game plan with this list? Like, what are you trying to achieve?
Basically, the Praetorians come out turn 1. They're your auto in, since you treat them as lights for reinforcements. But you hope you get the carries in. I think in the last 5 or 6 games I've run with them, I think I've gotten them in once on turn 1.
That is true. On our game, you got them in on turn 2, I believe.
At 2 different events I ran the list, I got carries in turn 1 in one of the 4 games for each event. So that's how that went.
At least there's consistency.
Of a sort. So carries kind of are used to protect one of the flanks of the Praetorians, because they move 12, Praetorians move 11. They're kind of that protection against things with cleave that might naturally be inclined to go into them. They're kind of an anti-shooting unit, so because of loose formation, they can hit things in forest due to sure shot, so they ignore, obscuring. They have the 12-inch barrage range. They have the 10-inch insanity range. They have the -1 defense potentially for making things that are trying to go into Praetorians a little bit less resilient against Aura of Death. So it's just kind of a very brutal setup, and then you can also use either a cable edge or terrain to kind of protect the other flank. kind of have golems in back of the Praetorians, so if anything breaks through, they get punched by golems. And then you can either try to have, clear the threat and then have golems leapfrog the Praetorians, or you can just have Praetorians just continue their march around the table just to get into new trouble. You kind of have the Archimandrite kind of behind everything centrally, so he can, heal the Praetorians. He can shoot size 2 threats past the Praetorians.
Can I ask you to move a little closer to the mic? Just getting a little quiet.
I haven't moved any further from the mic.
Okay.
I don't know if this is better or not, but
that sounds good now. It was just you're getting a little quiet, and it was like, okay.
Weird. But yeah, just kind of keep everything fairly central. Golems, fairly close to the Archimandrite so that they can be buffed or healed. Hire Deacon within buffing range of one of the golems if you want to bless them. Otherwise, just have her keep generating tokens every turn. Have the Archimandrite within healing range of the Praetorian brick, so you can keep that horrible thing going as long as possible. And then just kind of once you start to turn the tides and grind enough things down, you just kind of have things start to spread out and take more of the table.
Cool. And is this kind of like your favorite list right now?
Oh yeah, it's pretty much been what I've been running the last several months, or some variation of. Again, this has kind of been fine tuned over time, but that's the general idea behind it.
Nice. So what are things when you play the list you don't want to see? Like, what are some of the weaknesses of it?
Basically what I've been saying the whole time. Things with a high volume of attacks, things that ignore armor, and ranged. Those all suck. I guess Linebreaker is pretty bad too, just because that's kind of like the linchpin of keeping the Praetorians alive. So if you lose Bastion and Field, it's like, well, defense 1 or 2, rerolling 6s, tenacious 1, is a lot less exciting than defense 4 or 5 with all that. So if the Praetorian block collapses too early, you probably just lost the game. I don't think there's a lot of ways around that, because if they collapse that, they're just flooding into your half of the table, and you're pretty much cooked, I think.
Oh, poor Praetorian. Okay. Thank you for that one. Let's go into your Fallen Divinity list.
Alrighty. I think this is about what they had. I'm trying to remember what Carl originally had back in the day. I think it was something like, well, Fallen Divinity has to be your Warlord.
Yeah.
Add on, attack on another 70 points for Aura of Malice and Eternal Discipline, just to kind of make her and your nearby things a little more defensible. 2 5 blocks of Canophores in her Warband. Again, kind of workhorses. You have an Ire Deacon, no upgrades, sitting in a naked MSU of Legionnaires, just their little free banner. A third set of Canophores, this time MSU, and the thinking behind that is because you have the Blasphemous Soma modifying your target rolls, and they're coming in on 3s instead of 2s on turn 3, that extra MSU is just kind of a potential freebie. It's basically you're autoing in one of the Canophore blocks. You're using that MSU as a second die to fish for that 5 block. And if you happen to get the MSU in as well, that's gravy. But otherwise, you're really just kind of bringing it mostly to try to get both of the 5 blocks in on turn 3.
Okay.
And then you have the Stratios. Now, since the Fallen Divinity has already taken Eternal Discipline, he doesn't work quite as well with this, but he just has Aventine for Tenacious and the Legio Primigena for the Order of Death banner. Praetorian Guard, a 5 block with the banner and the Propane Reliquary to get them up to 4 AOD, and then MSU Legionnaires with banner and Optio. That gets you to 2,000 points. Fairly similar in that Praetorian Guard takes point and just kind of tries to grind down and hold the objective. You have the Ire Deacon kind of ramping up Fallen Divinity as quickly as you can. You have the MSU characterless Legionnaires with Optio to kind of get up on a point and kind of cause diversions. Fallen Divinity, you probably don't want to put her on the table too soon, just because you don't want her to get caught up too early.
So do you want her on like turn 2?
Turn two is probably safest, I'd say.
Because like she doesn't want to be like turn 3 way far back, not
No,
contributing. Because
yeah.
she kind of wants to hit that like tier 2 and then hit something like do work, do damage.
Yeah, because she's a heavy, you don't want her at March 5 coming in from the back of the table on turn 3.
Yeah.
I'd say turn 2 is probably a little bit safe, just so that you can kind of have your other stuff kind of in front of her already, and also keep your opponent guessing as to where she's going to go. Because otherwise they can try to counter deploy either into her or away from her. The 2 Canaphore blocks probably go in frontish of her, just so that they're benefiting from her tier 2 aura. They're hitting at 6 attacks a stand now. They're screening her for melee threats, and then, once one of them dies, you're hopefully at a point where you're hitting tier 3, and then so you can just come out swinging and just eat things each turn.
Yeah.
And also, because they're 5 wounds a pop, Canaphores can tank the 4 wound penalty from her tier 3 if they end within 10 inches of her, so they could be up to 7 attacks a stand. Hitting on 4s, always inspired, so hitting on 4s because they're base 3. So hitting on 4s, 7 attacks a stand, cleave 1, dauntless, so they can't be broken. And then,
Flawless strike.
Well, no, because that's the memory of old, so if they're already engaged, they could use flawless strikes and then class. Otherwise, they will not be getting as a draw event, and it will require them to use an action. So, personally, I think it would just be better just to go wild with 7 cleave 1 attacks per stand.
No, that does sound fun.
Yeah, and then the other Canaphores just kind of run around causing trouble. Very kind of heavy, very kind of late game, but between the Fallen Divinity and the 3 Canaphores, you have 4 heavies, so any objective markers, you can start getting into those pretty quickly and blowing those up in one activation for most of the stuff. Canaphores really throw their weight around. Fallen Divinity throws their weight around. The Hydra Deacon finally got a nice little update recently where Black Flame Coruscation, her nuke spell, it used to only scale on Dark Power, now it scales on Fallen Pantheon as well. So towards the end of the game, she can switch to nuking things. So yeah, just
that's
a
really
fun.
Nice. That's cute. Oh, it's really sweet.
yeah, just oh god, that card art is so fucking metal. I love it. It's like some burned out skeleton with just like black flames coursing from its eyes and mouth.
Yeah.
I don't, you know what you're talking about. It's great. But yeah, just kind of a very killy, aggressive, grindy list. Well, only 9 activations though, so you'll really feel each thing that you lose.
No, that's yeah. It's not terrible. Like, it's not terrible in the part of like, oh, you'll feel it that you lose, but like if you play it right and you don't have to, like if you just play into your strength of the Canaphores and Fallen Divinity and getting the Fallen Divinity to tier 3 as soon as possible, people are gonna have a bad time.
Well, yeah, but when you're going into like a Sorcerer King's player that has like 12 or 13 activations before adding in their like 2 or 3 conflagrations, or you're going into like a Nord's list with like 14 activations, re-rolling all bows and shots on flanking shots, like you're gonna start to feel that pretty quick when it's like, cool, I'm out of cards. Like that's nice. I've got like 5 more activations to burn through now. All my I bottom decked all my cool shit. Now I'm just gonna pick up 2 of your regiments. It's like, oh, this kind of sucks. Shit.
Yeah.
I don't like this. This isn't fun anymore.
Yeah, I want to do all the cool stuff instead of just like got card drawed and then they got to do cool things into me and I can't counter.
Yeah, they just layered like 3 or 4 activations into me with like 3 MSUs each hitting like 18 times or something.
This isn't fun. I'm the one who's supposed to have fun.
Yeah, I was having fun and I was rolling dice. When's it my turn to play again, please? Thank you.
Yeah. Sir, I demand fun. Where is it? All right. Well,
Dear Parabellum, I have noticed a flaw in your game and that the opponent gets to take a turn too. I strongly suggest that you rectify this in future revisions of the game. Respectfully, I don't know, player.
Old Dominion players. Oh man. Okay. Well, I think that's it. We've covered a lot. Do you agree, Steve, that we covered a lot?
Yeah, I mean, we covered the entire army. To anyone that's still listening at this point, congratulations. Get out your decoder rings and.
What are you doing, like an old 90s cartoon? Thanks for watching. Now, if you have your decoder rings, you can find out the next clue for our next episode. Actually, yeah, no. I can just tell them it's like Bed and Sorcerer Kings is the next one we're going to be doing. So that should be fun. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for answering all my questions and doing like a faction overview. A very in-depth one, what I actually greatly appreciate and enjoyed, as I didn't get my ass kicked as much in this Elden Ring video as I did the last one. And thank you for joining me today and talking about all this.
I probably would have been distracted, but it just occurred to me that I could have had you put the Elden Ring thing up on stream on Discord, so I could have watched it happen.
Oh, I thought you were playing Elden Ring as well, because I was doing these questions and everything, and trying to all right, okay, he's talking. Yeah, okay, I got it.
So I am doing that now. I'm just about to. Well, let me make sure I secure the kill. Cool, Millennia's dead. Oh no! But I'm Scarlet Routed. I don't have any cures. Oh god. Okay, now I'm on the clock. Okay, I got the rune. I got the remembrance. Where's the eggs? There we go. Grace, please. Oh, it's burning down. Oh god.
Are you covered in rot? Oh my.
Yeah, God. I'm covered in rot, and I'm trying to get it to let me rest at the site of grace. There we go.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I started the DLC when we got in here, and I kind of just was like, oh, I'm gonna just go do the Divine Feast. Like, I'll maybe do a couple tents on that, and no, he's dead. And then I'm like, okay, well, I'll go over to the Twin Moon Lady, and I'm like, well, I could just get 20 or 200,000 more ruins, and then I can just level up, so I don't have to worry about losing them, because I'm probably gonna die to her a bunch of times, like I did the first time. Did some other side stuff, came back, did her in the first try. I'm like, oh god. And then I went and fought a Death Knight, and he just beat me 2 or 3 times, probably 3 or 4 times, and then I beat him.
I have to say, it was very weird to me, playing the DLC, getting all the Shadow Tree shards and stuff, and being like, oh, I'm a fucking badass. Oh, look at me, I'm just swinging my dick around. I'm just the cool kid on campus. And then I go back to the main game, and I'm like, all right, time to go slap Millennia. And then she just hits me twice, and I just keel over dead. I'm like, oh, that's right. Without my Shadow Tree hallucinatory fragments, I'm actually just a weak little scrub. I forgot.
I finished the DLC, and I was like, oh, I want to do it again. Well, I got to replay the main game, and I'm like, but I want the ruins. I want all the greater ruins. So I'm like, well, I guess I'm gonna do this. And then I did it all in 5 hours. I'm like, all right, cool. And then I'm like, well, I want to do the DLC with entering it with you, Steve. And I'm like, I guess I got 2 days. I guess I'll just finish the game and do a bunch of side quests and get another ending done.
Yeah, it was kind of weird because I breezed through the core game with this build. I get to the DLC. I'm like, oh, this little shadow person's not going to be an issue. He takes a little rock out of his thing, throws it at me, and shaves off 3/4 of my health bar. And I'm like, oh fuck, this guy's got hands. This is how this is going to go. I finally get to a point where I collected enough fragments to be a badass in that. Cleared beat the final boss. Fuck that. got back into the main game. I'm like, well, at this point, it's just Melania and the Farah Mazala, and then I go to fight Melania, and I'm like, all right, it's gonna be I'm dead. It's like, okay. Turns out that Knight's Lightning Spear that I got in the DLC really just lit her up.
Yeah, I beat her with like Night Glade or Night Cavalry Halberd, and then I beat her with Greatsword. It was really tough, but I did it. And then I beat her with Magma Blades, and that's kind of just my go-to to beat her, is just like stun lock her with Magma Blades. I beat Radon with Magma Blades, and that was actually really fun. It only took me 20 attempts, and I was like, you know what, I'm proud of that one. That was a good one. Here, take this, weird dragon lady. Yeah, it's fine.
Now remember, give her.
I just gave her the concoction. I don't know how it's supposed to work.
Okay, so you gave her Talier's nap juice. Okay, so give that to her at night, and then go beat Sanasax, and then come back and talk to her, and that'll progress that.
I gotta run all the way over there. Okay, well that's another adventure for another time.
You're going there anyway.
Well, I just completed. I just killed a Deathrite bird and did the dungeon thing, and I'm trying to get into the blue place and trying to remember how to do that. I think I gotta like jump on the butt of. No, I gotta climb up there. Been a while. I gotta remember how to do all this. Well, we should probably call it a night. So thank you for joining me. Thank you for being here. For all the listeners or viewers, thanks for watching. Like and subscribe. Join the BonkTable Discord. It's in the description below. Bother Steve. You can find him on the main Discord and the BonkTable one. And I hope everyone has a great day.
Yep, feel free to reach out to me about anything. I would not put too much stock in the things I say. Thank you to Mass for letting me spout nonsense for the last 3.5 hours.
Yeah, we're actually at almost 4. I think this is the longest BonkTable thing yet, but we have still not hit 4 hours.
It's because I prattle on too much, but apparently not enough to hit 4.
No, you got to do scenarios.
Maybe next time a faction comes out that I'm really drawn to, I'll grind a lot in that, and then you can have me on for that, and then we'll hit 4 hours. Everyone will just collectively shake their heads and wonder where everything went so wrong.
Long format content. That's what we're here for. Okay, well, thank you very much, and everyone have a great day. Bye.
Goodbye.